Chapter 10:10. Just as the two experts were having an exchange in the north, Fang Xinjian had already returned to the palace in the imperial capital. After 1 day and 1 night, he once again opened up the black paper that sealed the prince. The prince in the black paper had indeed calmed down a lot. She stared at Fang Xinjian coldly and said, "Let me out. Don't worry, I won't attack anyone." After all, she was an unrivaled genius from the Western land, a person who had once dominated a region. After 1 day and 1 night, she had already thought through the situation clearly. Fang Xinjian shook his head. "You can't do it now. I'm just taking a look at your situation. When we reach the place, I'll let you out." With that, he closed up the paper seal once again, leaving behind the prince who was yelling and shouting furiously. Seeing that her vision had once again returned to darkness and she had lost Fang Xinjian's image, the prince was so infuriated that she gritted her teeth and said with great hatred, "Fang Xinjian, just you wait." Thinking of her current state, she felt both embarrassed and infuriated. To think that she had been reared by a man like a pet. Even after being released, she still had to do such things. When had she ever encountered such a situation? The prince thought hatefully, "Fang Xinjian, when I get hold of your weakness, I'll definitely lock you up. You'll lick my feet and eat my shit every day." After putting away the paper seal, Fang Xinjian went to look for the fourth prince, Tyrant, and the others. He started to give them some instructions regarding the cooperation between the Empire and the Holy See of Truth, as well as the harvesting of the plains. It could be said that after the battle in the imperial capital, Fang Xinjian's reputation was like the sun in the sky. Many people even referred to him as the world's top expert and the strongest in the world. Countless influences and experts had submitted to him. Moreover, although Tyrant and the other 5 Tier 5 divine-level experts had been defeated by the extraordinary Sun, their prestige was not affected at all. After all, the extraordinary Sun had been a Tier 6 divine-level expert back then and had even wielded the White Emperor Zenith sword. It was only normal for them to have lost. Fang Xinjian knew that if top-notch experts were excluded, Tyrant and the others, as well as the over 10 experts who had submitted to him after the battle in the imperial capital, including the Sea Monarch, would be sufficient to deal with most dangers. Therefore, Fang Xinjian was not worried. He only provided Tyrant and the others with guidance in their martial arts cultivation and made some arrangements for the cooperation with the Holy See of Xinjiang before announcing that he would enter seclusion again. Fang Xinjian's goal in seclusion this time around was naturally to strive for Tier 7 of the divine level. He wanted to find a world where the flow of time was very different from here. While striving for Tier 7 of the divine level, he wanted to perfect his high-dimensional sword arts once again. He wanted to make preparations for the battle that he might have with Erbian in the future. Moreover, the time path at Tier 7 of the divine level might also be of help to him in understanding his lifespan. Middle-earth was filled with the flames of war, and the people had no way of making a living. There were eunuchs and relatives in power, and outside, there were warlords and warlords. The imperial authority was weak, and the politics were dark. After 200 years of rule, the Great Jin dynasty finally reached its end. The central dynasty had almost lost control over all 12 regions in Middle-earth. Right now, in the heaven-bearing palace in the divine capital, Fang Xinjian opened his eyelids slowly and looked at his surroundings. The first thing he did was to observe the flow rate of his lifespan. At the next moment, a hint of joy appeared on his face. Good. Based on this speed, I'll stay in this world for 5 years, and only 1 month will have passed in Miracle World at most. This amount of time is sufficient for me to do those things. Concurrently, the martial will in his body had already swept out. Right now, his cultivation was so deep that he could naturally control his martial will freely. As long as he was willing to, his martial will could cause mountains to crumble, the earth to shatter, rivers and seas to overturn. It could also enter and exit the netherworld without any form or form. Within a short period of time, his martial will had already roughly scanned through the entire divine capital. A world that's similar to the ancient dynasties? Right now, Fang Xinjian had naturally arrived in this parallel world through the nine-tiered heavens. However, it was slightly different from the previous few times. This time around, he had directly substituted himself in this parallel universe, just like how he had entered the Fang clan's parallel universe the other time. With a slight scan of his martial will, Fang Xinjian gained a slight understanding of the divine capital he was in. It was a pity that this version of himself in this parallel world was too weak. The instant his martial will descended, all of his thoughts were crushed into dust, leaving behind only an empty shell of his physical body. There was no way for him to know his identity in this parallel world. However, looking at the dragon robe he was wearing right now, he could guess that he was probably the so-called emperor. In the senses of Fang Xinjian's martial will, his appearance in this universe was that of a 15 or 16-year-old young man. His body was skinny, his face was pale, and he appeared sickly. However, there was no hint of the emperor's prestige. He did not care about these identities. It was just that he knew nothing about the current world. No matter what, this was a world where one could strive for Tier 7 of the divine level. Although Fang Xinjian was very confident in his sword arts, he would not be blindly arrogant. Therefore, the first thing he needed to do now was to understand the situation in this world. At the thought of this, he looked at a young eunuch at the side and said, "Come over here." The young eunuch had delicate features, and there was a hint of intelligence in his eyes. "Your Majesty, what instructions do you have?" When he walked up to Fang Xinjian, although he was very polite, it seemed to be a set etiquette. His expression lacked respect toward imperial authority. Fang Xinjian gave it some thought and said, "Tell me about the current situation in the world." Hearing Fang Xinjian's words, a hint of contempt flashed in the depths of the young eunuch's eyes. He felt that this young emperor was really just a clay puppet. The emperor probably could not even get out of the Qingtian palace, and yet the emperor still needed to look for him to find out about the current situation in the world. However, at the next moment, a hint of perplexity flashed in the young eunuch's eyes. He felt that the young emperor's eyes were very attractive and beautiful. The young eunuch said in a daze, "The emperor has just succeeded the throne and is too young. Thus, his authority has fallen to someone else. Right now, the authority in the imperial court is in the hands of General Chao, Wang, and imperial tutor He. However, the world has long since been in a state of war. The feudal vassals and tyrants have taken over territories and declared themselves kings. The imperial court's orders probably can't even get out of Jing region." After performing the heart sword path, the young eunuch naturally told Fang Xinjian everything he knew, causing Fang Xinjian to frown slightly. He had not expected that not only would his identity in this parallel universe be of assistance, but it would also be a burden. However, the young eunuch was just a young eunuch after all. He had only heard about the current situation in the world from some officials and did not know much about it himself. Therefore, when Fang Xinjian asked a few questions, the young eunuch became vague. Therefore, Fang Xinjian split out a few streams of martial will and probed out toward the entire divine capital. On one hand, it was to understand the situation in this world. On the other hand, it was to see what the extraordinary powers in this world were. Chapter 10-11. Fang Xinjian's martial will rose abruptly into the sky, looking down at the huge divine capital. This city, which had been the center of the great Jin dynasty for over 100 years, was still extremely prosperous even in this turbulent and chaotic world. There were people coming and going everywhere, and there were groups of carriages and horses. Some of the streets were even livelier than before. The scale of this divine capital was even greater than the large cities that Fang Xinjian had seen in the modern era. There were densely packed buildings and streets everywhere, and there was no lack of huge buildings that were several tens of stories tall. It was a wonder how they had been built. Looking at the huge city under his feet, Fang Xinjian locked onto 3 locations with a single thought. They were a manor in the east of the city, a corner of the palace, and a military camp outside the city. He could sense powerful powers from the various light and heat energy waves in the world. However, based on the waves that I'm sensing now, these 3 people are the strongest in the divine capital. They have at least tier 5 divine level powers. As for how much they're hiding, it's hard to say. Moreover, based on these locations, one is in the palace, one is in the military camp, and the last is in the Imperial Tutor's manor in the east of the city. These 3 people are most likely Wang, General Chao, and Imperial Tutor He, whom the eunuch mentioned. That's not right. To think that there's another power in the military camp that isn't inferior to these 3 people? Fang Xinjian shook his head and put this aside for now. With a flash, he headed toward a corner of the palace, planning to take a look at the extraordinary powers of this world's experts and take control of the palace. Simultaneously, in a luxurious pavilion in a corner of the palace, although this was not the place where the Emperor, Empress Dowager, and Grand Empress Dowager resided, it was much more luxurious and grand in terms of decorations. Huge ice cubes that were half the height of a person were placed in silver basins in the hall, exuding hints of cold air. Even though it was in the middle of summer, there was no hint of heat. A white-haired, white-browed, and effeminate old man was sitting on a wooden armchair. Beside him were 2 maids, one massaging his shoulders while the other brought a cup of herbal tea to the old man's mouth. Below the old man, a young man with a feminine face said with a smile, "Godfather, this is Qing Province's June red. Together with the spring water from last year's winter, it's the best for relieving summer heat. It can also improve one's inner force and meridians." The one who was referred to as adoptive father was naturally one of the 3 heavyweights in the imperial court, the head of the imperial palace and the leader of the Blue Dragon secret palace, Wang. The Blue Dragon secret palace that he controlled was built by the Shenzong Emperor 50 years ago. It was responsible for maintaining discipline and supervising the officials. Unfortunately, the previous emperor, Emperor Wenzong, was frail and sickly. He passed away early, and his control over the court was extremely weak. Later on, he suddenly passed away, leaving the young prince to ascend the throne. This led to the current situation of the Blue Dragon secret palace gradually becoming more and more arrogant. Wang slowly accepted the tea and took a sip. He said calmly, "What brings you here this time?" Nothing can escape Godfather's discerning eyes. The young man smiled and said with sincerity, "Godfather, the current imperial court is weak. The emperor was born deep in the palace and grew up in the hands of a woman. The grand preceptor is tyrannical and crafty. It's the time when the world is about to fall." Eunuch Wang waved his hand and interrupted him. Then, he got the maidservant beside him to leave. After making sure that there was no one else in the surroundings, he smiled coldly and said, "Xiaohu, just say what you want to say. Between us, father and son, there's no need to beat around the bush." The young man smiled and nodded. "Godfather is right. I won't hide it from you. The reason I came to the palace in secret this time was because of General Chao's orders." "General Chao?" Wang narrowed his eyes, and an incomparable fear flashed in the depths of his eyes. General Chao was the Grand Marshal of the world's armed forces appointed by the late emperor. Not only did he have a virtuous reputation, but his prestige in the military was also unparalleled. He was a minister entrusted by the late emperor. The young man in front of him was once a spy sent to monitor General Chao. It seemed that he had changed sides. With the late emperor's death, the world was in turmoil. General Chao and the imperial tutor, he were like fire and water. One of them represented the civil officials, while the other represented the military generals. They had always been at odds with each other. With the late emperor's death, the prince was still young and unable to control them. In an instant, the two of them fought each other and completely lost control. Now that things had come to this, it could be said that the enmity between the two of them was as deep as the ocean. General Chao was unwilling to take a step out of the military camp, while Grand Preceptor he kept on submitting petitions, working with the officials to strip General Chao of his military power. As the flames of war rose in the world, General Chao gradually showed signs of unease. The young man continued, "Right now, the 30,000-man Forbidden Army and the 20,000-man City Guards are all under the general's control." Hearing the young man's words, Wang's countenance turned cold. He glared at the young man and asked, "What are you guys planning to do?" The young man smiled and said proudly, "Foster father, it's naturally to get rid of the emperor's side and get rid of the treacherous officials." Hearing the young man's words, Wang's face twitched fiercely. He said in disbelief, "You guys want to rebel?" "Foster father, you've misunderstood." The young man shook his head. "General Chao is extremely loyal, so how can he rebel? It's just that treacherous he has taken control of the government and is wreaking havoc in the world. General Chao really can't take it anymore and has decided to put everything on the line to get rid of the treacherous he, returning peace to the world. After this is done, he'll naturally seek forgiveness from His Majesty." Wang smiled coldly. Who would believe these words? It was nothing more than General Chao wanting to start a coup and bathe the divine capital in blood. When that time came, all the officials who had disagreements with him would probably be beaten up and killed. When that time came, he would naturally be able to control the emperor and the righteous cause. Although the great Jin dynasty was beyond cure, the divine capital was the richest place in the world after all. It was the center of the imperial court. Not only would one be able to control the righteous cause, but they would also be able to control a tremendous amount of wealth. It was a top-notch foundation. Wang said, "Imperial tutor, he is a grandmaster of the Confucian sect, and his cultivation has reached the realm of perfection. How do you guys plan on dealing with him?" "There's no need for foster father to worry about that. As long as foster father remains neutral today and doesn't take action, General will definitely reward you handsomely in the future." With that, the young man suddenly looked in the direction of the city gate. "Foster father, listen up. It's starting." Eunuch Wang furrowed his brows when he heard a series of battle cries. He felt extremely conflicted. He knew that the great Jin dynasty was going to sink eventually. However, he felt that it was a little difficult for him to decide whose side he should stand on. Just as he was still feeling hesitant, Fang Xinjian did not plan on waiting any longer. He took a step forward, and the entire space seemed to turn dark as he arrived in the room. The young man looked at Fang Xinjian, who had suddenly appeared before him, and a hint of astonishment flashed in his eyes. "Fang Xian." At the next moment, the corners of his lips curled up into a hint of a smile. "Your Majesty, blades have no eyes. It's better for me to protect you." As he spoke, he had already left behind a series of afterimages. The essential qi in his body kept on changing, and he was like an eagle descending from the sky, grabbing toward Fang Xinjian's shoulder. However, before he could complete his action, a vast sword intent had already swept out. It was as if it wanted to sweep through the world and shock the entire universe, and it also illuminated the young man's astonished face. Chapter 10-12. A hint of astonishment appeared on the young man's face. At the next moment, he was slashed into two by the sword, turning into a pool of blood that burst out in midair. Wang was about to make a move when he saw the young man die. Simultaneously, his shoulders sank, and he discovered that he was held in Fang Xinjian's hand. His essential qi seethed throughout his body, and the heavenly nine arts he cultivated circulated to the extreme. However, he was unable to move at all. This time around, he broke out in cold sweat. Tiangang realm? He could only think of cultivators at the Tiangang realm who could suppress him with a single hand. Fang Xinjian also checked the circulation of extraordinary powers in Wang Xinjian's body through this grab. The corners of his lips curled up into a hint of a smile. Interesting. He then tossed Wang onto the wooden armchair with a light toss. Throughout the entire process, Wang used all his powers, and the essential qi in his body seethed to and fro like a great river. Cold qis that could freeze the entire divine capital kept on erupting. However, none of them could reach his body, causing him to be unable to put up any resistance. Right now, his forehead was covered in cold sweat. He looked at Fang Xinjian in a daze and said, "A Tiangang realm expert. It's impossible for you to be the emperor. Who on earth are you?" Fang Xinjian smiled faintly, stood with his hands behind his back, and said, "Wang, follow me to wipe out the traitors. How about it?" Since there was a ready-made identity that he could make use of, Fang Xinjian would naturally not give it up. After all, with the identity of the emperor, it would be easier for him to control influences. Moreover, it would not be wrong to say that this body in the parallel universe was his. Faced with Fang Xinjian's intense gaze, Wang felt as if streams of sword light had pierced into his brain. Hints of coldness uncontrollably appeared in his heart, and he was unable to summon any will to resist. He only felt that the other party was pressing down on him like the heavens, and his only choice was to obey. Therefore, he stood up shakily, cupped his hands and said, "This old servant obeys." Right now, soldiers were swarming over in the divine capital. Along the way, they did not encounter any decent resistance. They sealed off the streets, city gates, and even the palace. Regardless of whether they were commoners or aristocrats, all of them hid in their houses, not daring to resist. Many officials even opened the doors to welcome and lead the way. Clearly, they had discussed this with General Chao beforehand. As the palace's gates closed, almost the entire divine capital was under the military's control in the blink of an eye. Simultaneously, more and more troops headed toward the Grand Preceptor Manor in the east of the city to surround it. At this moment, the Grand Preceptor's residence was already surrounded by thousands of soldiers. Powerful bows and crossbows were ready to fire, and it seemed like not even a mosquito could escape. At the front of the army, a tall, rough-looking man in a battle robe was sitting on a 2-meter-tall big black horse. It was none other than the world-famous Grand Marshal of the Armed Forces, Chao Yuan, and his dark-blooded Qilin horse. Next to Chao Yuan, a young man in black robes rode on an ordinary war horse and stood together with him. Chao Yuan said, "After spending several years of hard work to set this up, we've finally succeeded. As long as we get rid of He Wanzhou, the entire divine capital will be under our control." "Be careful," the young man said. "This is a crucial step for our sacred sect's revival. He Wanzhou is one of the rare grandmasters in the Confucian sect, and his cultivation is only a step away from the Tiangang realm. We mustn't let anything slip." Concurrently, some soldiers started to shout loudly toward the Grand Preceptor Manor, persuading them to surrender. A short moment later, the Grand Preceptor Manor's gates opened slowly, and an old man with an unadorned appearance and a majestic aura walked out slowly. It was the head of all the officials in the world, the great Jin dynasty's Grand Preceptor, He Wanzhou. Seeing that old man walk out slowly, Chao Yuan smiled coldly and said, "Grand Preceptor, long time no see." "Renegade, the Imperial Tutor," he said solemnly, "you've led troops to create chaos and occupied the Imperial capital. Are you thinking of rebelling?" As the Imperial Tutor, he let out an enraged bellow. His voice, which was mixed with essential qi, was like the evening drum and morning bell, instantly spreading out and reaching half of the divine capital. Although the voice sounded very loud, it was not noisy and was filled with an awe-inspiring righteousness. With his explosive bellow, the soldiers in the surroundings immediately took a few steps back slowly, revealing hesitant expressions. Clearly, although the imperial court was weak, the name of righteousness still held weight in the hearts of many soldiers. At the sight of this scene, Chao Yuan immediately bellowed, "Don't believe his lies to mislead the people. Renegade he, you've taken control of the imperial court's politics, held the emperor hostage, framed loyal people, and brought chaos to the world. You've caused the people in Middle-earth to have no way of making a living. Today we're going to get rid of the emperor's subordinates and get rid of the traitors. Kill." With Chao Yuan's command, the several thousand soldiers from the Forbidden Army immediately regained their vigor with his reputation in the army. At the next moment, their chi activities connected as if they had turned into one entity. They then took a step out in unison and charged out toward the Grand Tutor's manor. It was as if the earth and mountains were shaking, and the entire divine capital trembled. In the sky, Fang Xinjian looked at the several thousand soldiers who were charging toward the Grand Tutor's manor, and his eyes narrowed slightly. Almost all of these soldiers had the abilities of a knight. They could race against cars, break through walls with a single punch, and break steel pillars with a single kick. Several hundred of the leaders all had the abilities of a conferred knight, and the few generals in the lead had power waves that were above the divine level. To think that the average level of extraordinary powers of a single forbidden army has reached such a level. It seems that the number of cultivators in this world has far surpassed that of miracle worlds. It's no wonder that the scale of the divine capital isn't any weaker than that of modern cities. What interested Fang Xinjian even more was the powers displayed by the two parties in the battle. It's like two fields, with the powers exploding steadily in the other party's field. The two gushes of powers wear each other down, yet they won't cause too much damage to the surroundings. This power is a little similar to electromagnetic fields, yet it's also different. However, just like electromagnetic fields, it also propagates at light speed and is transmitted by one's thought. However, it also wears down very quickly. It seems to not have much prowess beyond 100 meters. So they're mainly used for defense? If they don't wear down the field outside the other party's body, their attacks will be ineffective. Under Fang Xinjian's gaze, several thousand soldiers had surrounded the entire Grand Tutor's manor. The essential chis of several thousand people were connected together, as if 1,000 people had turned into one. Each time the Grand Tutor and the soldiers exchanged blows, their fists and legs would collide, and the pressure from the field would seem to be clashing simultaneously with the powers of several thousand people. It's no wonder that, unlike Miracle World, this world still maintains an army. Their extraordinary powers have the characteristic of being able to merge together perfectly. Fang Xinjian suddenly asked Wang, "What does the Forbidden Army use? Why are they able to connect their powers together?" Wang threw a surprised glance at Fang Xinjian before saying, "What the Forbidden Army performs is a battlefield military formation. It can connect everyone's essential chis together, forming a complete chi field. The chi field that these several thousand soldiers have joined forces to perform is comparable to that of a Disha realm expert. If the Imperial Tutor he doesn't wear down their chi field completely, he won't be able to kill any of them." Fang Xinjian nodded in understanding, and his understanding of this world deepened by another level. Simultaneously, the Imperial Tutor he was facing several thousand Forbidden Army's warriors by himself. However, he was able to overcome all obstacles along the way. Each of his punches and kicks brought forth waves of overwhelming power, clashing against the Forbidden Army's warriors' chi field. Layers of great waves and air explosions were stirred up in the air. Wherever he passed by, people would be thrown off their feet. Although he was unable to kill these Forbidden Army's warriors, who were encompassed by the chi field within a short period of time, there was no one who could stop him. He was like a sharp arrow, piercing out toward Chao Yuan's location. Chapter 10:13. Good timing. Chao Yuan let out an explosive bellow as he looked at He Wanzhou, who was dashing toward him like a sharp arrow. He grabbed out fiercely with his right hand, and a black and thick metal spear in the distance was grabbed in his hand. At the next moment, He raised the tip of the spear, and the essential qi throughout his body gushed out endlessly toward the tip of the spear. As a cold gleam flashed, the long spear was like a black dragon that had broken free, engulfing He Wanzhou. With this spear tap, everyone felt as if their vision was encompassed by darkness and killing intent. It was as if their lives and deaths were no longer in their own hands. The space was in a state of chaos, and the point at the tip of the spear seemed to contain endless darkness. It was as if a black dragon had opened its mouth, wanting to engulf the entire world. This was Chao Yuan's famous black dragon spear technique. He had once relied on this spear technique to kill the #1 warrior in the western regions with a single attack 20 years ago. He had stood out in the War of the Western Expedition and displayed great splendor, eventually becoming the current Grand Marshal. Looking at Chao Yuan's spear attack, Fang Xingjian could not help but praise him inwardly, to be able to push it to such an extent with the power of a Tier 5 divine level expert. This person's spear arts have already reached the pinnacle. Moreover, to be able to condense it to such an extent, the repercussions of the attack will at most destroy a few streets in the vicinity. This shows that his control over his power. However, at the same time, a hint of doubt flashed in Fang Xingjian's eyes. It was because the power contained in the tip of Chao Yuan's spear attack could squeeze out spatial gap. However, there was no such thing in reality. This was a little strange. Faced with Chao Yuan's spear attack, He Wanzhou, the great grandmaster of the Confucian sect whose name had been spread throughout the world for 30 years, did not panic at all. He struck out with his palm, but it was as if the weight of mountains, rivers, and the land was heavy. Under this palm attack, the entire space seemed to have turned into a material state. It was as if the entire world was pressing down on him, wanting to see if his black dragon would be able to engulf it or not. At the next moment, the duo's chi fields collided. Two invisible force fields pressed and rubbed against each other, causing the ground within a range of 1,000 meters to shatter inch by inch. In the next instant, the tip of the spear collided with the palm. Two forces capable of collapsing mountains and destroying cities clashed against each other. The black spear was instantly compressed into a crescent moon. At the most crucial moment of the fight, the surrounding soldiers took a step forward in unison. The chi activity of several thousand people joined together, turning into an overwhelming airwave that pressed down toward the imperial tutor He. This was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. The black iron spear, which had been bent to the limit, instantly shattered, and countless fragments shot towards the two of them. Chao Yuan spat out large mouthfuls of blood as he retreated continuously. Countless fragments shot at his body, but they couldn't hurt him in the slightest. They could only make clanking sounds of metal colliding. Clearly, his body was extremely tough. However, with every step he took back, the ground would crack and stone shards would fly, causing the surrounding Forbidden Army soldiers to scream in pain. Clearly, he was dispersing the powers in his body through the process of retreating. With this exchange and the clashing of the chi fields, the surrounding Forbidden Army soldiers were all thrown off their feet. Amidst the repercussions, the houses on the 7 or 8 streets in the surroundings collapsed amidst a series of loud sounds. The long streets shattered as if it was the end of the world. However, this was because Chao Yuan and He Wanzhou had reached the pinnacle of their martial arts realms. 99% of their powers had been unleashed onto each other. Otherwise, it would not have been just the 7 or 8 street. Half of the divine capital would probably have been in danger of collapsing. Compared to the seriously injured Chao Yuan, He Wanzhou, the grandmaster of the Confucian sect, only had a slightly pale face. He did not seem to be seriously injured at all. Following that, he took a step forward and landed before Chao Yuan like a cloud in the sky. He slapped out with his palm and his chi field swept out, wanting to crush Chao Yuan's head. However, at this critical moment, a stream of sword light darted out from Chao Yuan's shadow. At the next moment, The sword light covered the sky and encompassed He Wanzhou from head to toe. Shadow attachment sword technique. You're someone from the demon sect. At the next moment, streams of blood-red light burst out from He Wanzhou's body. As he let out an explosive bellow, layers of air currents gushed out, sending the surrounding soldiers and generals flying. However, he had already suffered internal injuries from the earlier battle with Chao Yuan and the several thousand members of the Forbidden Army. In order to take down the rebel army in one fell swoop, he had suppressed his internal injuries and chased after Chao Yuan. He had not expected that there would be an expert from the demon sect who was in no way inferior to him lying in ambush. The sneak attack had immediately caused him to suffer serious injuries. Streams of savage sword cheese darted about in his acupuncture points and meridians, causing him to be left with less than half of his powers. He glared at Chao Yuan and the black-robed young man next to him and said, "I see. Traitor Chao, I didn't expect you to be so audacious as to dare to work together with the demon sect in defiance of the world. Ha 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 ha, the winner takes all. There's no such thing as good or evil." Chao Yuan laughed out loud, stood up straight, and grabbed out with his hand. He released his essential qi and grabbed out, turning it into a long black spear. It was as if there were countless vengeful spirits howling amidst the black essential qi. The killing intent and evil aura it emitted were more than 10 times more violent than before. At the sight of this scene, Imperial Tutor, he was so infuriated that his body trembled. Killing and refining souls. Chao Yuan, to think that you're so depraved. Don't waste your breath on him. Kill him. As he spoke, the black-robed young man had already turned into a black shadow and dashed up to Imperial Tutor He. His entire body sent out a myriad of sword shadows that encompassed over. On the other side, Chao Yuan laughed out loud. "Boys, surround this treacherous official. Today, we're going to get rid of all the treacherous officials on the Emperor's side." As he spoke, he moved along with his spear. It was as if he had turned into a huge black dragon, surrounding Imperial Tutor He. At the same time, more and more members of the Forbidden Army gathered in the surroundings, turning into an endless qi field. Under the lead of a few generals, they kept on charging toward Imperial Tutor He. In the Grand Preceptor's manner, many of the Grand Preceptor's disciples, who had been protecting his family, as well as some other officials from the Confucian sect, stood out and fought against the Forbidden Army. The streets below were in a state of chaos. Large areas of houses had been turned into ruins, and Imperial Tutor He's side was being pushed back repeatedly. It was as if they would be killed at any moment. Wang, who was in the sky, said, "Your Majesty, are you still not going to make a move?" Fang Xinjian did not reply. Instead, he watched with great interest as Imperial Tutor He, General Chao, and the black-robed young man circulated their extraordinary powers. Through his martial will senses, he could sense that the essential qi in their bodies flowed through their bodies. It could be used to strengthen their physical bodies, and also to form a qi field to deal with their enemies. The trio's martial arts also possessed mysterious abilities. General Chao's Black Dragon Spear technique could engulf essential qi, while Imperial Tutor He's Confucian sect's martial arts could intimidate and lower the opponent's output of power. The black-robed young man could even enter the shadows and make use of the shadows to exert his power. However, what interested Fang Xinjian the most was that when both parties were engaged in battle, they did not seem to leave the ground at all. They were not simply stepping on the ground to make use of their prowess. Instead, there was an endless stream of power being channeled into their bodies from the ground, increasing their battle prowess. Recalling that the space had not been compressed earlier, Fang Xinjian thought, the space and the ground in this world seem to be a little different. Hearing Wang's words, Fang Xinjian nodded slightly. It's true that we can't let them continue fighting. Otherwise, half of the divine capital will be destroyed by them. Chapter 10:14. As Fang Xinjian spoke, he pressed down with a single palm. In that instant, the weather in the entire divine capital changed, and an overwhelming pressure descended from the sky. Pitter-patter-patter sounds rang out incessantly. As this overwhelming pressure came encompassing down, all the members of the forbidden army in the divine capital felt as if they were being pressed down by an invisible force. They had no choice but to drop to their knees. The situation in front of the Grand Preceptor Manor was especially serious. Almost everyone was pressed down onto the ground, prostrating themselves like flies that had been swatted by a fly swatter. They were unable to move at all. Only Chao Yuan, He Wanzhou, and the black-robed young man were half kneeling on the ground, resisting the pressure that had descended from the sky. They did not drop to the ground completely. With a soft pitter-patter, Fang Xinjian and the astonished Wang landed on the ground. They slowly walked toward the three of them. He Wanzhou looked in Fang Xinjian's direction in bewilderment. "Your Majesty," He Yuan's face was filled with disbelief. "How is this possible? Walking in the air and suppressing an army. Fang Xian, to think that you're a Tiangang realm expert?" He Yuan had never imagined that the useless emperor who had been born in the depths of the palace and grown up in the hands of women, the young lad who was still wet behind the ears in his impression, would actually have the strength of a Tiangang realm expert. Fang Xian was the name of this world's Fang Xinjian. As for things like walking in the air and suppressing an army, Fang Xinjian was not interested in explaining. He merely walked up to the three of them and stood with his hands behind his back. "Chao Yuan, you mobilized the forbidden army, charged into the imperial capital, and wantonly killed the officials of the imperial court. Is there anything else you want to say? Incapable ruler! The empire will be destroyed in your hands." The black-robed young man and Chao Yuan roared and chose to resist at the same time. Destructive true qi gushed out from their bodies, and the overload of power caused their tendons and meridians to tear and their acupoints to collapse. However, they still managed to erupt with 200% of their power. One on the left and the other on the right. Chao Yuan turned into a black dragon that could devour the heavens and the earth, while the black-robed young man turned into a faint, almost invisible shadow that attacked Fang Xinjian. An ear-piercing whistling sound rang out as waves of air were pushed aside, spreading out in all directions like shockwaves. At that moment, the two of them were moving at an extremely fast speed. The primary energy inside and outside of their bodies had merged into one. An aura field had completely enveloped Fang Xinjian, suppressing him completely. At this moment, both of them were fighting with their lives on the line. However, just as they inched closer to Fang Xinjian, the power of the sword gleams and spear shadows in their hands condensed into one, causing the space to distort and light to dissipate. Just as they were about to hit Fang Xinjian, kneel. Rumble! It was as if heavenly punishment had descended, and thunderclouds could even be seen seething in the skies. Everyone in the entire city was taken aback, feeling an endless sense of terror in their hearts. Meanwhile, General Chao and the black-robed young man came to an abrupt stop in midair, as if they had been hit by an invisible force. With an explosive rumble, as if they had been struck by lightning, the two of them fell to their knees, smashing hard onto the ground. The tremors caused the street to crack, and air currents shot out in all directions. Dust and smoke were sent flying, and two large craters were formed where they were. A hint of astonishment flashed in their eyes. They summoned their true qi, and waves of power from the depths of the earth kept coming from under their feet, wanting to resist. Die. Kacha-kacha sounds rang out, and amidst a series of bone-chilling twisting and clashing sounds, Chao Yuan and the black-robed young man were twisted into two pools of twisted flesh and blood, falling to the ground. At the sight of this scene, both Wang and Imperial Tutor He's eyes were filled with trepidation. With a single command to kneel and a single command to die, the two Disha realm experts, who could reign supreme in the pugilistic world, had died just like that. With such unfathomable means and unfathomable cultivation, Fang Xinjian had now become the most terrifying character in the world to the two of them. The culprit is dead. Everyone from the Chao clan is to be imprisoned and dealt with according to the laws. As for the other members of the Forbidden Army, let's not pursue this matter for now. Fang Xinjian said calmly, the imperial court will provide financial support to the injured commoners. Remember to appease the commoners as well. Imperial tutor come up with a plan and report it to me later. I'll leave the remaining matters to you. Right now, Imperial tutor, he no longer had the disposition of leading the officials. Faced with Fang Xinjian, he dropped to his knees and kowtowed, saying, "Your subject obeys your orders." When he lifted his head again, Fang Xinjian's and Wang's silhouettes were nowhere to be seen. Therefore, over the next few days, both Imperial tutor and Wang gave their all to assist Fang Xinjian, not daring to have any other thoughts. The chaos in the entire divine capital was suppressed very soon. The Forbidden Army and the city guards were almost unscathed. However, most of the people under Chao Yuan's command were transferred out, and then all of them went missing. There seemed to be no news of them anymore. The battle in the divine capital had unknowingly spread out, and many pieces of news regarding the current Emperor Fang Xian being a Tiangang realm expert spread out. However, those who were slightly rational would not believe that a 15 or 16-year-old young man would be able to cultivate to the Tiangang realm. Many more people suspected if the great Jin dynasty's royal family was still hiding any powerful experts. This also caused the feudal vassals to still feel wary toward the great Jin dynasty's royal family. In the palace, many secret martial arts manuals that the royal family had kept in their collection were placed before Fang Xinjian, flipping through them rapidly. Amongst them, there were martial arts manuals that were the most basic and most extensive. There were also secret manuals that were unfathomable and were said to be left behind by Tiangang realm experts. Fang Xinjian looked at the many secret manuals before him, quickly calculating the effects of these secret manuals in his mind. The extraordinary powers in this world are divided into the most ordinary cultivators, followed by the Xiantian realm, the Disha realm, the Tiangang realm, and the legendary Great Tao realm. In Middle-earth, ordinary cultivators were basically all apprentices or disciples who had just joined the sect not too long ago. Those who had practiced martial arts for over 5 years would be able to advance to the Xiantian realm after clearing up the major and minor circulations as well as the conception and governing meridians in their bodies. To Fang Xinjian, the battle prowess of the so-called Xiantian realm was about the same as that of a first transition knight. If one continued to clear up the 8 extraordinary meridians with essential qi, allowing the essential qi to flow through the entire body, they would be able to reach the Disha realm. The elite disciples of ordinary sects and armies, including the sect leader and famous generals, were all experts at the Disha realm. The lower limits and upper limits of experts at this realm were very different. They were similar to second transition conferred knight. After reaching the Disha realm, one would be able to engulf the essence of the earth and the earth's qi, using the Disha qi to temper the 72 acupuncture points in one's body. With each acupuncture point cleared, one's essential qi's quality, quantity, and the toughness of one's physical body would all increase tremendously. After clearing up all the acupuncture points, one would then be able to strive for the Tiangang realm. People like Chao Yuan, Huanzhou, Wang, and a few of their subordinates were all experts at the Disha realm. It was just that the number of acupuncture points they had condensed was different. At most, they had condensed 1 or 2 acupuncture points, while the strongest, Huanzhou, had condensed 50 acupuncture points. In Fang Xinjian's opinion, these Disha realm experts were already comparable to experts at Tier 1 to 5 of the divine level. In the pugilistic world, Tiangang realm experts were already considered top-notch expert. There were probably less than 10 of them in the entire pugilistic world. As for the Great Tao realm, it was a legendary realm. There might not even be one in 1,000 years. Looking at the martial arts manual before him, Fang Xinjian said calmly, "Wang Yong, Are there any great Tao realm experts in the world today? Wang lowered his head and said, Ever since the demon sect's great emperor passed away 300 years ago, there hasn't been any news of great Tao realm experts in the pugilistic world. Fang Xinjian nodded and asked, What's the matter? Report it to me. Wang continued, Your Majesty, most of Chao Yuan's direct subordinates in the Forbidden Army have gone missing. Based on our intelligence, they've probably been received by the demon sect. Demon sect? Hearing that, the corners of Fang Xinjian's lips curled up slightly, revealing a hint of a cold smile. Chapter 10:15. The demon sect was a faction that had been passed down since ancient times in Middle-earth. Due to the differences in their religions and ideologies, the demon sect's martial arts were gloomy and mysterious, and they had countless enemies. They had even managed to unify the pugilistic world in the past. Therefore, after they were overthrown, they were naturally discredited by countless people in the world. Although they called themselves the Sacred Sect, they had always been called the Demon Sect by the outside world. The Demon Sect's most flourishing era was 300 years ago. Demon Emperor had dominated the world, and demonic flames had seethed. The Demon Sect had become the world's #1 sect and had almost unified the world. However, after Demon Emperor died, the Demon Sect had split up and had internal strife. Back then, the 10 great orthodox sects had surrounded and attacked the Demon Sect. After 10 years of fierce battles, they had finally chased the Demon Sect out of Middle-earth's 12 regions. They could only survive in the outer islands, the plains in the north, and the deserts in the west. This time around, Chao Yuan's rebellion had been investigated by the Blue Dragon Secret Palace. There were traces of the Demon Sect in it. It could even be that 10 to 20 years ago, the Demon Sect had planted Chao Yuan as a chess piece. Many people in the Forbidden Army were also suspected to be involved with the Demon Sect. This time around, the world was in chaos. The imperial court was weak, and the emperor was young. Therefore, the Demon Sect saw an opportunity and wanted to take over the Demon Sect's position, reinvigorate the Demon Sect, and return to Middle-earth. There's probably no lack of chess pieces from the Demon Sect among the officials in the imperial court. After saying this, Wang buried his head deep into the ground. After interacting with Fang Xinjian for the past few days, Wang could sense that Fang Xinjian's prestige had become increasingly heavy. Fang Xinjian's imposing manner made it increasingly hard for him to have any thoughts of resistance. This was only natural. Regardless of whether it was in Miracle World or in the many parallel universes in the past, Fang Xinjian was a character who had dominated a world and dominated the world. Moreover, he even had the experience of presiding over several countries. Faced with a small palace and a divine capital, Fang Xinjian was naturally very familiar with leading them. Each and every one of his actions revealed a prestige that had been nurtured in several worlds. It was no small matter. Within a short few days, he had already figured out the operations of the entire Great Jin dynasty's government. He had also roughly familiarized himself with the officials in the imperial court. Coupled with the full cooperation of Grand Preceptor He and Eunuch Wang, the operations of the entire imperial court were accelerated very quickly. Hearing Wang's report, Fang Xinjian smiled indifferently. As long as they don't do anything out of line and are good officials, we don't have to bother with them. If he dares to stand up for the Demon Sect in the future, just kill him. With that, he once again turned his attention to the secret manual before him. At the end of the day, he was just a passerby in this world. Unifying and grasping the powers in the divine capital was just to make it easier for him to do things in this world. While looking at the secret manual in front of him, Fang Xinjian said, "Wang Yong, give me a palm strike." Wang immediately knelt down in fear and said, "This old servant doesn't dare. I told you to fight, so just fight. What's with all this nonsense?" Fang Xinjian said coldly, and a cold killing intent pressed against Wang's body, making him feel as if there were countless sabers and swords piercing his body. As Fang Xinjian's cultivation got increasingly deeper, his heart-sword path also became increasingly terrifying. Each and every word he said and action had a magical power that could control people's hearts and the world. Hearing Fang Xinjian's instructions, Wang's countenance was even more grim than if he were to cry. This old servant will have to show my incompetence. As he spoke, the heavenly E9 revolution's inner force in his body surged out from his dantian, passing through 9 acupuncture points consecutively. It turned into an increasingly harsh cold qi and slapped out toward Fang Xinjian through his palm. Wherever his palm passed by, the air seemed to freeze up. Even all the physical matter within a range of 100 meters had the illusion that they were moving at a slower speed. All right. However, as Fang Xinjian let out a soft cry, the cold qi dissipated, and all of Wang's essential qi flowed back into his body, back into his dantian. There was not a single bit more or less. Your Majesty's prowess is unrivaled. This old servant is impressed, Wang immediately bowed and said, not forgetting to flatter Fang Xinjian. However, Fang Xinjian ignored Wang's flattery. He was still thinking about the essential qi cultivation that Wang Yong had displayed earlier. My senses were right. Wang Yong's essential qi, He Wanzhou's essential qi, Chao Yuan's essential qi, and even that expert from the demon sect and the several thousand experts from the Forbidden Army. Although their attributes are different, their essence is the same. Is this the reason why they are able to connect their essential qi and form a qi field? Fang Xinjian looked at the secret manual before him, and his brain, which had completely surpassed that of a supercomputer, started to make rapid deductions once again. Streams of essential qi vortexes rose up before him. There were a total of 3 of them. One was dark and deep, one was righteous, and one was cold and deep. They were the essential qi cultivated by Chao Yuan, He Wanzhou, and Wang Yong. At the sight of this, Wang Yong once again lowered his head, his eyes filled with astonishment. To think that he can casually imitate our essential qi. Is this His Majesty's true cultivation? It's really. Putting aside eunuch Wang's emotions, Fang Xinjian had already gained an understanding of the Xiantian realm's essential qi cultivation through his deduction of the conception and governing meridians and 8 extraordinary meridians from the essential qi manuals. However, this also made him even more puzzled. There's no mistaking it. It's the same. If it's said that in Miracle World, everyone's martial will has their own strong personal imprint, making it hard to integrate them, the essential qi in this world is basically the same source of energy. Humans are like cars. The essential qi that everyone uses is essentially the same type of gasoline. The so-called difference in attributes is at most the difference between 92 gasoline and 95 gasoline. It's only natural that such energies can be easily combined. Thinking of the abnormalities in the land and space here, Fang Xinjian had a vague idea of what was going on. If it's really like what I think, then the waters in this world might be even deeper than those in Miracle World. The enemies hidden here are probably not to be underestimated. After making a judgment about this world's martial arts cultivation, Fang Xinjian decided that he had to continue researching this world's martial art. This was because he had deduced that great enemies might appear, and it was also because the martial arts here had given him a lot of inspiration and could help him improve his sword art. Therefore, he wanted to continue cultivating his high-dimensional sword art. He would not give up on this world's martial arts either. Throwing a glance at Wang Yong, Fang Xinjian waved his hand and said, "All right, you can take your leave. If there's nothing important, don't let anyone disturb my cultivation." As Fang Xinjian waved his hand, Wang Yong felt as if he was riding on clouds and mist. His surroundings were filled with dazzling colors, and by the time he reacted, he had already appeared in his own courtyard. Gulping, Fang Xinjian knelt down and kowtowed toward Fang Xinjian, a hint of fervor flashing on his face. With His Majesty's cultivation, there might really be hope for the great Jin dynasty to be revived. After sending off Wang Yong with a single thought, Fang Xinjian slowly spat out a pitch-black cloud from his mouth. The cloud spun in midair and eventually condensed into a lump, gradually taking the form of a human. It was in his appearance. The moment the clone appeared, it nodded toward Fang Xinjian, sat down in the secret manual, and started to deduce the Disha realm after ordinary cultivators and Xiantian realm. Chapter 10:16. Watching as his clone started to derive this world's martial arts, Fang Xinjian continued to ponder. It's not just the demon sect. Now that I've become the great Jin dynasty's emperor, although I have a righteous title, the number of enemies I have is unprecedented. Now that the dynasty was in its final years, there were all sorts of rebels, aristocratic clans, and feudal vassals. They were all eyeing him, the emperor. Moreover, Fang Xinjian had read up on the Azure Dragon's secret palace's information over the past few days and had gained a better understanding of this world's politics. Due to the existence of martial arts and the existence of martial arts experts who could go up against armies, the experts and sects in this world had extremely high statuses. And the Tiangang realm experts who stood at the pinnacle of the pugilistic world had the effect of changing the situation with a single sentence. For example, the current Great Jin dynasty's decline was due to the death of the royal family's Tiangang old ancestor. And now, the rebels in the 12 regions all had the shadows of the pugilistic world's large sects behind them. The strongest feudal vassals even had countless connections with the world's 7 strongest sects, the 3 Mountains 4 Peaks. The Demon Sect, and the 3 Mountains 4 Peaks. Fang Xinjian thought about the lack of manpower in the imperial capital. He reached out his hand and took out the sealing paper he had kept in his body. He spread out the black paper, revealing an infuriated prince. Prince's cheeks were puffed up like 2 steamed buns as he glared at Fang Xinjian. His eyes seemed to be bloodshot. Fang Xinjian, you can't have forgotten that I'm in here, right? Do you know how terrible it is to be alone here? Are you trying to drive me crazy? There's no food, no books, no lights, and not even a servant who can talk to me. How do you want me to pass my days in here? Fang Xinjian looked at Prince's flustered and exasperated expression and smiled. Then do you want to come out? Late at night, moonlight scattered down on the ground like silver frost. It was already time for the curfew, and there were no longer many people on the streets of the divine capital. Only the patrolling city guards would walk by occasionally. As almost all of them were accomplished martial artists, they did not even need torches. They only needed to sweep their gazes to see every movement in the darkness. Right now, in a courtyard in the north of the divine capital, a young lady with a graceful figure dressed in a black muslin dress was like a fairy in the night. Her figure floated to and fro in the air, entering a study like a stream of green smoke. As soon as he entered the study, he saw an official looking at a document in his hands with a deep frown. Who? When the minister saw the figure appear in front of him, he was about to call for help. However, when he saw the girl's face, he immediately lowered his voice and knelt on the ground. Saintess, why are you here? The young lady's countenance was pale, as if she had not seen the sun all year round. However, her pupils were blood-red, as if they were embedded with rubies, revealing an endless sense of mystery. Hearing the minister's question, the young lady's cold voice rang out, "The operation this time around has failed, and the sacred sect's many years of planning has gone down the drain. The elders in the sect are infuriated, so it's naturally impossible for them to not investigate this. What on earth is going on?" The minister sighed and said, "The Fang clan's strength seems to be stronger than we imagined. There's probably a Tiangang realm expert hidden in the royal family." Tiangang realm? The saintess' brows twitched. What's going on? Could it be that Fang Yue isn't dead? That's impossible. We saw Fang Yue pass away from serious injuries with our own eyes. It's definitely not fake. The only possibility is that there's a new expert in the Fang clan who has advanced to the Tiangang realm. As for the rumor that the current emperor, Fang Xian, had attained the Tiangang realm, the two of them did not even mention it. Clearly, they knew that it was nonsense. Tiangang realm? The Saintess let out a cold laugh. A newly advanced Tiangang realm expert won't be able to change the overall situation. You guys continue to lay low. There will naturally be Tiangang realm experts to deal with the Tiangang realm expert. As she spoke, the Saintess figure turned into bubbles and dissipated into the air, causing the minister to gasp in shock. This is the reverie movement technique? Outside the divine capital, the demon sex female Saintess slowly opened her eyes in a forest on a hill. A hint of contemplation flashed in her eyes. The minister in the north of the city was already the 12th minister she had contacted over the past few days. This allowed her to understand the current situation in the divine capital a lot. A Tiangang realm expert? And there's also Emperor Fang Xian, who seems to have suddenly changed into a different person. A hint of fluctuation flashed in the Saintess' eyes as she thought, the information is sufficient, but if I were to return just like this, how would I be able to show off my abilities? The demon sect was located in an uncivilized land with scarce resources. The competition there was 100 times more intense than in Middle-earth. Although Fu Daoxian was the demon sect's illusory emotions path's female Saintess, it was not as if she did not have any competitors. She thought to herself, there's a Tiangang realm expert guarding the palace, so it's true that I can't enter casually. However, if I use the reverie movement technique to control essential qi, I can consider getting close to that little emperor. That little emperor is only 16 or 17 years old. How can he go up against my illusory emotions path's heavenly emotions technique? If I can control the little emperor, it'll be a great merit. Moreover, my actual body is outside the divine capital, so there's no need for me to take the risk. It's worth a try. The little emperor had originally been just a puppet, and it would be the same no matter who it was. However, with the news that the royal family might have a Tiangang realm expert, the little emperor's importance in Fu Daoxian's eyes suddenly rose. Upon thinking of this, Saint Fu Daoxian sat down cross-legged with her eyes closed. At the next moment, a stream of blurry figure formed from essential qi slowly floated out from her back. With a slight movement, it floated out in the direction of the palace along with a gust of night wind. In order to place this bet, Fu Daoxian had put in a lot of effort. As a Disha realm expert who had opened up 40 acupuncture points, this essential qi clone that was activated through the reverie movement technique had 50% of her prowess. Arriving in a small courtyard in the palace, Fu Daoxian quickly chose a maid to possess. Her essential qi flowed into the maid's body and was extremely compatible. In the blink of an eye, it filled up the other party's meridians and controlled her every move. This maid had clearly been carefully selected by Fu Daoxian. Not only was her skin fair, but she also had a tall and slender figure. Her face was also like a peach blossom, and she was extremely beautiful. Right now, her body contained her essential qi, and her disposition suddenly became like an orchid in a deserted valley, filled with feminine charm. She smiled. For the next few days, she acted like an ordinary maid, and there was no sign of any abnormality. However, she was secretly trying to find out information regarding Fang Xian in the palace. With her essential qi from the illusory emotions path's martial arts and her many years of experience competing in the demon sect, everything went smoothly. How could ordinary palace maids and eunuchs be a match for her? Unknowingly, she managed to dig out all sorts of information. Chapter 1017. A few days later, Fu Daoxian began to cautiously approach the place where Fang Xian practiced martial arts. Over the past few days, she had found out that whenever Fang Xian was practicing martial arts, he would send away the palace guards. This was her best chance. Pretending to be lost, Fu Daoxian's innocent eyes revealed a tinge of confusion and nervousness as she carefully walked into a garden. Soon, she saw a young man sitting cross-legged in a pavilion in the water. His eyes were closed and his palms were facing the sky, as if he was practicing inner force. Fu Daoxian narrowed her eyes and pricked up her ears. She could already tell the depth of his martial arts from his breathing and heartbeat. Humph, he hasn't even opened up the Ren and Du meridians. He's not even in the innate realm. The fate of the great Jin dynasty is indeed set. In this world, the power of martial arts was too important. As a leader, although he was young, he had not even reached the innate realm. Naturally, Fu Daoxian looked down on him. A hint of contempt flashed in her eyes, but in the next moment, she continued to look innocent and confused. She walked along a 9-turn bridge and headed in the direction of the pavilion in the water. However, she had only taken a few steps when a hint of surprise appeared on her face. Because she could hear a series of gushing sounds coming from Fang Xian's body incessantly, and it was like a surging river. This is, coincidentally, breaking through the Ren and Du meridians? In the next moment, a series of crackling sounds could be heard from his body. It was as if a series of meridians had been broken through. A long cry came from his mouth. Now that he had reached the innate realm, he could release his inner qi. This could be considered a small achievement. Has he reached the innate realm? Fu Daoxian raised her eyebrows and revealed a hint of joy. I can take advantage of the fact that he has just reached the innate realm and his qi activity is still unstable. I can plant the art of heavenly pathos in him. At the thought of this, she moved. Although she seemed to be stumbling and looked weak, she was in fact moving at an abnormally fast speed toward Fang Xinjian. However, just as she was 10 meters away from him, another loud bang rang out from his body. It sounded like the evening drum and morning bell. This is breaking through the 8 extraordinary meridians? Fu Daoxian frowned. Is this guy crazy? Since I've just reached the innate realm, I should slowly nurture my true qi and wait for my true qi to fill my conception and governing vessels before I consider breaking through the 8 extraordinary meridians. However, the next moment, something that surprised Fu Daoxian happened. Under her gaze, the clothes on the other party's body suddenly swelled up, as if countless gusts of air were blowing under his clothes. In the next moment, a series of firecracker-like sounds rang out from the other party's body. With each explosion, streams of air shot out from the surface of the other party's body. After a while, the sounds stopped. Fu Daoxian said in surprise, "It's done." A cultivator was striving for the innate realm right before her eyes, then clearing his 8 extraordinary meridians and reaching the pinnacle of the innate realm in the blink of an eye. It was really unbelievable to her. However, at the next moment, something that she found even more unbelievable happened. The other party stood up and bent down slightly. An invisible aura seeped out from his body like a huge dragon was crouching on the ground. As the action was completed, Fu Daoxian could sense that there seemed to be countless essences gushing out from the ground toward the other party's body. He's actually going to strive for the Disha realm? Under Fu Daoxian's astonished gaze, countless Disha qis gushed into Fang Xinjian's body, gathering at his heart very quickly. It was as if all of them had been sucked into an invisible black hole. At the next moment, Fu Daoxian sensed that something was being born in the other party's body. An invisible aura rose up like a star, forming a connection with the ground under his feet. The first acupuncture point, the 1-inch heart acupuncture point, the Disha realm. To think that I've passed it just like that? Even now, Fu Daoxian was still in slight disbelief as he looked at the scene before him. A guy who was still an ordinary cultivator a moment ago had actually attained a breakthrough in just a few breaths' time, reaching the Disha realm. After Fang Xinjian condensed the first acupuncture point of this body, he sensed the seething and vigorous essential qi in his body, as well as the streams of earth qi gushing up from under his feet. He frowned slightly and stopped condensing the next acupuncture point. It's as I thought. There's something strange about this world. The earth qi that Fang Xinjian absorbed could be used to condense acupuncture points. As each acupuncture point in the Disha realm was condensed, his physical body would become increasingly stronger, and the amount of earth qi he absorbed would also increase. Earth qi could be converted into essential qi, and his essential qi would also become increasingly robust. However, through Fang Xinjian's senses, this earth qi, or Disha qis, was said to be the power that seeped out from the depths of the earth in all secret manuals. However, Fang Xinjian could clearly sense that there was something different about this earth qi. This is definitely not a natural power. It's a power cultivated by some living creature or expert. There's a mark left behind by a life form that is similar to martial will. Fang Xinjian's brows furrowed slightly. Through his sudden inspiration, he could sense that if he did not think of a way to get rid of the unique mark in the Disha qis, then the more earth qi he inhaled and exhaled, and the more acupuncture points he refined, the more trouble he would have to face in the future. Therefore, he did not continue to forcefully cultivate. After stopping his cultivation, he lifted his head and looked at Fu Daoxian, who was in a daze. Seeing Fang Xinjian's gaze, Fu Daoxian's heart skipped a beat. However, he continued to maintain a perfect act on his face, appearing like a lost maid. He said with a terrified expression, "Sir, please forgive me. Did I disturb your cultivation? I can't find my way back. I took a few turns here and there, and I ended up here." She looked like she was about to cry, and it was indeed very pitiful. It was easy for men to feel protective towards her from the bottom of their hearts. However, just as she finished saying this, a palm patted gently on her body. "I've waited a long time for you, demon sex female saint." The few words were spoken softly, but they were like a clap of thunder that rang out next to Fu Daoxian's ears. She was about to make her move when she realized that the essential qi in her body had been completely suppressed by an unfamiliar power, causing her to be unable to move. She turned with great difficulty and cried out in her heart, "It's that Tiangang realm expert that the royal family has hidden." However, when she turned back, a young face appeared before her. It was Fang Xinjian. Fu Daoxian was slightly stunned. She looked at the Fang Xinjian before her and then looked at the Fang Xinjian in the pavilion. She could sense that both Fang Xinjian were breathing and had heartbeat. They were real existences and were definitely not essential qi clones. At the next moment, a hint of a strange smile broke out on her face. "Interesting. We'll stop here for today. Next time, our sacred sect will naturally send an important character to pay you a visit." As she spoke, the essential qi on the female attendant's body had already spread out toward the entire world, slowly dissipating on the ground. This was the essential qi clone that Fu Daoxian had dispersed. Looking at the essential qi that was slowly dissipating on the ground, Fang Xinjian's brows twitched slightly. Outside the divine capital, Fu Daoxian's actual body was jolted awake. She recalled everything she had seen. What's going on? Why are there two Fang Xians that look exactly the same? And one of them has reached the Tiangang realm? No, even though he's at the Tiangang realm, the feeling he gives me is completely different from the feeling Master gives me. Just as Fu Daoxian was pondering over this, she had already stood up, leaving behind a series of afterimages. She flashed continuously in the air like an illusion. Although the other party should not know the location of her actual body, Fu Daoxian would not underestimate any Tiangang realm expert. Therefore, she fled quickly in case the other party could catch up to her. However, before she could leave the 100-meter range and step out of the forest, she saw a man with his back facing her. The man stood with his hands behind his back, appearing as if he had been waiting for her for a very long time. That man turned around and smiled at Fu Daoxian. "Saint, you should stay behind. There are still many things about the demon sect that I'd like you to clear up for me." It was Fang Xinjian. Fang Xinjian was naturally very curious about the demon sect where the last great Dao realm expert had appeared. Chapter 10:18. Looking at Fang Xinjian, Fu Daoxian gulped. She could accurately sense that this Fang Xinjian's aura was in no way weaker than the two she had met in the palace. In fact, he might even be a little stronger. What's going on? Why is this happening? How did he manage to find me within such a short period of time? Or could it be that the two in the palace and this one before me are triplets? What on earth is going on? Although there were many amazing techniques in Middle-earth, due to the difference in systems and energies, there was no such thing as the ability to split into multiple clones and move at light speed like in Miracle World. However, Fu Daoxian was the demon sex female saint after all, a top-notch character in the pugilistic world. Her thoughts were in a mess for a moment, but she did not dwell on this problem. Instead, with a slight tremble, she created several tens of identical clones, scattering out in all directions. This was the highest secret legacy of the illusion body technique. It was like dewdrops and lightning, able to instantly create countless clones with essential chi. It was almost as if they were real, making it hard for others to distinguish them. For Fu Daoxian to perform this technique right from the start, it was clear that she had made up her mind to escape. However, at the next moment, a horrifying scene appeared before her eyes. Fang Xinjian put out his palm and grabbed out fiercely. In that instant, Fu Daoxian sensed that Fang Xinjian's palm kept on expanding and becoming bigger. It was as if it had instantly encompassed the entire sky and grabbed out toward all of her clones. What's going on? Is this an illusion? At the next moment, the huge palm encompassed the entire space where the clones were and then clenched down fiercely. Boom! With a single palm, all of her clones exploded, and she was gently pressed down by Fang Xinjian's palm. It was only then that Fu Daoxian reacted. Her senses were not wrong, and the palm she had seen earlier encompassing the sky was not an illusion either. However, it was not that his palm had become bigger, but that the world she was in seemed to have become smaller. The area within a range of 1,000 feet seemed to have been clenched in Fang Xinjian's hand. Realizing this, Fu Daoxian's face paled. His legs gave way and he fell to the ground. He stared blankly at Fang Xinjian, unable to summon any will to resist. Fang Xinjian grabbed Fu Daoxian and returned to the palace. With a casual toss, the compressed Fu Daoxian returned to his original form and fell to the ground. Fu Daoxian looked at Fang Xinjian with an ugly expression and said, "What kind of kung fu did you just use? This kind of martial art. I've never heard of it." Martial arts? Fang Xinjian was slightly stunned. Then, he shook his head and said, "Do you know how to give special names to your actions of walking, breathing, sleeping, and reaching for things?" Fu Daoxian's expression froze for a moment before she reacted. The martial arts that seemed amazing to her were just casual actions to Fang Xinjian. However, Fu Daoxian did not believe the nonsense that Fang Xinjian had said. In her opinion, this was definitely an unbelievable great skill. It was just that Fang Xinjian was being careful and was unwilling to reveal it to her. However, she let out a cold snort and did not do something as foolish as rebutting him. However, Fang Xinjian smiled and looked at Fu Daoxian, saying, "Demon sex female saint? It seems that your demon sect still hasn't given up on the divine capital." As he spoke, Fang Xinjian lifted a finger, and streams of black sword intent circled around his fingertip. He said slowly, "I still have many things that I wish to understand about your demon sect. I'll be the one to ask and you'll be the one to answer. If you're unwilling to answer, or if I discover that you've lied to me, then this will be the outcome." At the next moment, the black sword intent had already arrived before Fu Daoxian. Then, under Fu Daoxian's horrified gaze, it darted into her mouth like a slithering snake. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the depths of her body. At the instant the sword intent disappeared, an intense pain surged in Fu Daoxian's body. She felt as if every single one of her nerves and bones were being pierced by a myriad of steel needles. Her slender body instantly straightened up, and she arched up like a cooked prawn. Her eyes rolled back slightly, and hints of saliva flowed down from the corners of her lips. It was only after 10 seconds, which was as long as a century, that Fu Daoxian's body went limp completely. She lay down on the ground like a pile of mud, unable to even move a single finger. At this moment, her entire body was drenched in sweat, as if she had been fished out of a pool. The curves of her body could be seen clearly, and there was a kind of greasy feeling. Even her thighs and chest were trembling from time to time. To Fang Xinjian, who could alter electromagnetic signals in the microscopic world and even alter the other party's 5 senses, it was too easy for him to control the nerve signals in the other party's body. He could instantly make Fu Daoxian feel extreme pain. How painful would it be? For the past 10 seconds, Fu Daoxian felt as if she had given birth to 10 children. To Fu Daoxian, Fang Xinjian's means were like those of a demon. They were even more demonic than the demon sect. Right now, when Fu Daoxian looked at Fang Xinjian again, hints of terror appeared in her eyes. Fang Xinjian did not care about this and continued to ask, "All right, tell me what kind of experts the demon sect has. For example, are there any great Dao realm experts?" An elite in the demon sect like Fu Daoxian had experienced the intense competition in the outer regions and was also influenced by the demon sect's ideals. She had always been self-centered and would do everything based on her own interests. This was especially after seeing the demonic means that Fang Xinjian had just displayed. There was no way she would fight to the death for the sake of the demon sect's interests. Therefore, with one question and one answer, Fang Xinjian soon gained a rough understanding of the situation of the outer region's demon sect. As expected, the demon sect has stored the demon emperor's personal letter back then? Fang Xinjian was naturally very interested in the great Dao realm expert, the demon emperor. However, back then, the demon sect had fought amongst themselves and split into 7 groups. The legacy of the demon emperor had also been split into 7 parts. Based on my deduction, after condensing acupuncture points and attaining a breakthrough to the Tiangang realm, half of them would have died. Then, what kind of changes would there be after they enter the great Dao realm? Fang Xinjian's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at Fu Daoxian and said, "You said that the demon sect's 7 paths will be meeting at the headquarters of the Serene Mountain beyond the borders on the 8th of the next month to discuss the matter of joining the sects, right?" Fu Daoxian nodded. Fang Xinjian said calmly, "I want you to bring me there." Fu Daoxian was slightly stunned. "When?" "Now, of course." Therefore, Fang Xinjian left behind a clone to derive the secret manuals of the royal family and another to continue comprehending high-dimensional sword art. He had already left the divine capital with Fu Daoxian. He did not take a horse carriage or ride a BMW. It was because there was no vehicle that could be faster than him in this world. It was just that in consideration of Fu Daoxian's endurance, he probably could not fly too fast. Fang Xinjian opened his mouth and exhaled, and a gush of clouds gushed out. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a golden auspicious cloud that appeared before Fu Daoxian. Fang Xinjian then grabbed Fu Daoxian and stood on it. The golden auspicious cloud soared into the sky and flew toward the Serene Mountain beyond the borders. The Serene Mountain where the demon sect's 7 paths had gathered was the headquarters of the illusory emotions path. Fu Daoxian was the demon sect's illusory emotions path's female saint. When the countless guards in the palace saw the golden auspicious cloud soar into the sky, they immediately fell into a commotion. It was only when Fang Xinjian's voice rang out from the auspicious cloud that they calmed down once again. However, right now, as the countless members of the Forbidden Army looked at the golden auspicious cloud that was leaving at a rapid speed, hints of fanaticism flashed in their eyes. In an instant, the news that the current emperor, Fang Xinjian, was a reincarnation of a heaven and that an immortal had descended into the mortal world started to spread among the Forbidden Army. The more it spread, the more ridiculous it became. This was also something that Fang Xinjian had done in passing. With his current cultivation, any of his actions would be able to bring about a great impact. Right now, as Fu Daoxian looked at the increasingly faster auspicious cloud under her feet and the mountains and rivers that were receding rapidly, she no longer had the prestige of the illusory emotions path's female saint. She opened her mouth like a little girl and exclaimed, "What is this? Could it be an immortal treasure?" "It's just a martial will," Fang Xinjian said calmly. "Sit tight. I'm going to accelerate." Chapter 10-19. Not long after, the two of them crossed the distance of several regions and arrived above a stretch of desert. Throughout the entire process, Fang Xinjian did not show any intention of concealing the auspicious cloud under his feet. He allowed this cloud, which was emitting golden light, to fly past the heads of countless people. Within a short period of time, countless legends regarding flying deities spread across several regions in Middle-earth. After leaving the borders and arriving at the desert, Fang Xinjian followed Fu Daoxian's guidance and made many turns before finally arriving above a stretch of mountain range. The mountain range looked pitch black from afar. It was as if a black dragon was lying on the ground, giving off a savage and fierce feeling. This was the illusory emotions path's headquarters, the Serene Mountain. With the Serene Mountain as the center, the land within a range of 1,000 lis, as well as the several tens of tribes on the land, were all under the illusory emotions path's control. Almost at the moment when the golden auspicious cloud arrived above the Serene Mountain, someone from the illusory emotions path noticed the abnormality in the sky. It was because Fang Xinjian had no intention of concealing himself at all. He let the auspicious cloud emit golden light without any restraints and descended toward a manor at the peak of the Serene Mountain. That was the illusory emotions path's headquarters. Just as Fang Xinjian landed on a training field, countless black shadows darted out. They were many strong and muscular cultivators dressed in black training clothes. There were over 1,000 Xiantian realm experts and several tens of Disha realm cultivators. They were clearly the elites of the illusory emotions path's headquarters. However, even the illusory emotions path's elites were still looking at Fang Xinjian with surprised and doubtful gazes. No one dared to make a move recklessly. The scene of Fang Xinjian descending while riding the cloud was too unbelievable. However, an illusory emotions path's elder quickly recognized Fu Daoxian, who was next to Fang Xinjian. He frowned and said, "Xian what's going on? Who is this person next to you? Why did you bring him to the headquarters?" Fu Daoxian said hurriedly, "Elder Li, this is the Emperor." He came to the secluded mountain to discuss something with the honored master. Elder Li's eyes narrowed slightly as he scanned Fang Xinjian from head to toe. There seemed to be countless schemes flashing in the depths of his eyes. He naturally knew about the great Jin dynasty's emperor. Previously, the illusory emotions path had wanted to use him as a puppet, using the emperor to command the feudal vassals. They wanted to use the divine capital as the starting point to revive the demon sect. The moment he heard Fu Daoxian's reply, countless thoughts flashed through his mind, and he almost couldn't wait to give the order to capture this son of heaven. However, when he thought about how the other party had arrived on a cloud and Fu Daoxian's strange attitude, he temporarily suppressed this thought. Just then, Fu Daoxian sent him a voice transmission through Essential Qi. "Elder, this person has already attained the Tiangang realm. Quickly get the honored master to come and deal with him." Elder Li's countenance changed, and he nodded respectfully and said, "Since your majesty has arrived, please wait for a moment. I'll go and get the sect master to come over." After saying that, he left without even turning back, leaving behind many disciples who were staring at Fang Xinjian and Fu Daoxian. It was as if they were preventing the two of them from escaping. Over 10 minutes later, Elder Li returned to the training ground in a hurry. "The sect master will be here immediately. Please wait for a moment, Your Majesty." Fang Xinjian nodded and stood with his hands behind his back, not saying a word. At the next moment, a gush of qi field suddenly came gushing over from afar, encompassing the entire mountain in the blink of an eye. Such an astonishing area displayed the other party's profound inner force cultivation. And all the disciples who were in the middle of the qi field felt a heavy pressure pressing down on their hearts. Especially the evil and cruel aura contained within the qi field, it made it so that they could not summon any will to resist. That feeling was as if a ferocious beast was using its tongue to slowly lick their necks, its sharp teeth ready to pierce through their windpipes at any moment. It was also as if a person was facing an incoming tsunami, watching as the 100-meter-tall waves approached them inch by inch. Immense fear pressed down on their nerves, causing their bodies to be unable to move for a moment. And this qi field did not only bring about mental pressure, it also brought about the suppression of essential qi. All the martial artists who were enveloped by the qi field felt as if they had lost control of their essential qi. Be it inside or outside their bodies, all the essential qi was like a rabbit that had encountered a ferocious beast, shrinking back into their dantian. No matter how they tried to activate it, they were unable to move. The qi field of the Tiangang realm. The sect master is here. Elder Li also felt the essential qi in his body shrinking back into his dantian uncontrollably, and his eyes flashed with shock. Qi field suppression. It's the illusory demonic rotation. Hearing Elder Li's words, many of the illusory emotions path's disciples present revealed agitated expressions. It was as if something amazing had happened. Fang Xinjian frowned slightly and asked Fu Daoxian, "What's the illusory demonic rotation?" Fu Daoxian also became a little agitated. When she saw Fang Xinjian's cold gaze, she did not seem to be as fearful as before. She said, "The illusory demonic rotation is our illusory emotions path's greatest technique. Only 4 sect masters have successfully cultivated it in the past. Including master, that's the 5th person. This great technique has the prowess of rotating life and death, as well as reversing yin and yang. It's the world's top-notch essential qi circulation path, and it's capable of all changes. Within the illusory demonic rotation's qi field, the weak won't be able to control their essential qi. Even top-notch experts will face the danger of suffering from qi deviation when they circulate their qi. 99% of the prowess from any palm techniques, kicks, or sword attacks will be negated. Just as Fu Daoxian was introducing the illusory demonic rotation's origins to Fang Xinjian, a lady wearing a black veil had already arrived in the square. She had suddenly appeared in the training ground, and none of the many demon sect's disciples present were able to detect how she had arrived. The lady's expression was cold, and there seemed to be black qi circulating to and fro on her face at all times, making it hard for others to see her face clearly. Right now, the qi field that encompassed the entire training ground was being emitted from her body. However, what was even more unique was the demonic disposition she had. It was as if she was not a human but a demon that had escaped from hell. Seeing the lady's appearance, Elder Li immediately asked agitatedly, "Sect Master, you've successfully cultivated the illusory demonic rotation?" "That's right. I've gained something from my seclusion this time, and I've finally mastered our sect's greatest secret technique." As he spoke, a cold gaze had already gathered on Fang Xinjian. The surging qi field surged like a tidal wave, and the surrounding demon sect's disciples immediately felt that they could use their essential qi again. "You're Fang Xian?" The lady looked at Fang Xinjian and said coldly. Fu Daoxian, who was at the side, added, "Master, this is the current emperor. He's also another Heavenly Dipper realm expert in the imperial family after Senior Fang Yuwei." Heavenly Dipper realm? The lady frowned slightly, as if she was sensing something. However, in the next moment she sneered and said disdainfully, "He hasn't reached the Heavenly Dipper realm." As soon as she said that, the entire audience was in an uproar. Chapter 10:20. Fu Daoxian had always thought that Fang Xinjian was a Heavenly Dipper realm expert, because in her opinion, Fang Xinjian's series of miraculous and unimaginable methods could only be done by a Heavenly Dipper realm expert. Her master, the Illusory Emotions Path sect master, Zhao Yinglan, was undoubtedly also a Tiangang realm expert. When Zhao Yinglan judged that Fang Xian had yet to reach the Tiangang realm, Fu Daoxian immediately felt conflicted. But as long as she thought of the means that Fang Xian displayed in front of her, she instinctively felt that the other party was definitely an expert of the Heaven Dipper realm. Thinking of this, she immediately used essential qi to shake up the atmosphere and sent a secret voice transmission to her master, Zhao Yinglan. Master, there must be some misunderstanding. I've seen Fang Xian's means with my own eyes. It's true that they are unfathomable. Zhao Yinglan waved her hand. Xian you don't have to say any more. You're not at the Tiangang realm, so you were deceived by this kid. I don't blame you. As she spoke, she placed her hands behind her back and stared coldly at Fang Xinjian. The true energy around her body surged violently like a thundercloud, as though it was going to strike down at any moment. She said loudly, "What is the Heavenly Dipper realm?" It was to observe the way of the heavens, to act according to the will of the heavens, and to inherit the will of the heavens through the human heart. After reaching the Heavenly Dipper realm, you can directly sense the existence of the Heavenly Dipper clouds beyond the 9 heavens. Collect the Heavenly Dipper Qi to wash your own innate Qi and combine it with the Earth Evil Qi. The Heaven Dipper realm and Earth Dipper realm combine into one. This is the reason why Heaven Dipper realm experts are superior to Earth Dipper realm experts. For experts who have reached this realm, the quality of their Qi is 1,000 or 100 times better than other experts. It is no longer Qi but astral Qi. Hearing Zhao Yinglan's words, many of the demon sect's disciples, who did not know how powerful the White Dipper realm was, revealed looks of realization. The many elite disciples and elders who knew the profoundness behind it also nodded, waiting for what Zhao Yinglan was going to say next. A Heavenly Dipper realm expert's stellar energy must contain both Heavenly Dipper Qi and Earthly Fiend Qi. Saying that, Zhao Yinglan tilted her head and looked coldly at Fang Xinjian, saying, "But I can't sense any existence of Gang Qis from you. There's only a little bit of subterranean baneful Qis." The subterranean pernicious Qis on Fang Xinjian's body were naturally gathered from the subterranean pernicious Qis. He had gotten his clone to attain a breakthrough to the Disha realm. Hearing Zhao Yinglan's words, everyone finally understood what Zhao Yinglan's judgment was based on. This Illusory Emotions Path sect master was a Tiangang realm expert who had been famous for a long time. She was also a demonic expert who had mastered the Illusory Emotions Path's greatest technique, the Illusory Demonic Rotation. With that, everyone's gazes toward Fang Xinjian were filled with ill intentions. Even Fu Daoxian started to waver. Could it be that I've really been deceived by him? Zhao Yinglan was like a cat teasing a mouse, sizing up Fang Xinjian with great interest. She said, "Right now, you only have one choice, and that is to join our sacred sect's Illusory Emotions Path. I can make an exception and take you in as my disciple. With the assistance of our Illusory Emotions Path, it might not be impossible for the great Jin dynasty to prosper in your hands." "That's right. It's true that I'm not a Tiangang realm cultivator." Fang Xinjian looked at Zhao Yinglan's expression as if everything was under her control, and his attention slowly retracted from the essential Qis in her body. Within a short period of time, he gained a deeper understanding of the Tiangang Qis and Disha Qis, as well as the Gang Qis of Tiangang realm cultivators. Looking at Zhao Yinglan, Fang Xinjian said calmly, "Although I'm not a Tiangang realm cultivator, it's enough for me to kill all of you." Arrogant. Zhao Yinglan let out a cold snort, and the Gang Qis around her, refined from the Tiangang Qis and Disha Qis, gushed out like a tsunami. Of course, she did not deal a fatal blow. She only wanted to teach Fang Xian a good lesson, letting him know the immensity of the world. After all, as long as she could control him, she would be able to take down the entire divine capital without expending a single soldier. She would then be able to occupy a position in the world's great influence in the future. However, when the illusory demonic rotations chi field slapped onto Fang Xinjian's body, it was like waves slapping onto reef. The ground of the entire training ground trembled, and countless cracks appeared. However, Fang Xinjian did not move at all and was unscathed. Zhao Yinglan's brows raised up, and the gang qis around her seethed once again. In that instant, the entire qi field seemed to have turned into a vast ocean. Countless gang qis circulated rapidly, either twisting, intertwining, slapping, or charging out. The changes in the force were endless, reaching the limits of all martial arts transformations. It could instantly twist an aircraft carrier into dust, and even its physical structure would be completely destroyed, turning it into the most basic microscopic particles. What was even more terrifying was Zhao Yinglan's control over gang qis. Zhao Yinglan, who had attained the illusory demonic rotation, had concentrated 99% of her powers into the qi field under this series of attacks. The training ground under her feet shattered inch by inch, but it did not collapse completely. Fu Daoxian, who was within the qi field, did not even receive any damage. This displayed the illusory demonic rotation's extraordinary control over essential qis and gang qis. However, as Zhao Yinglan continued to increase her powers and the prowess of the qi field grew increasingly greater, it was like a nuclear reactor encompassing the entire training ground. As various molecules continued to disintegrate, a tremendous amount of light and heat was released. Countless microscopic black holes and spatial distortions appeared and disappeared instantly, causing the entire mountain peak to light up like the sun. The demon sex cultivators at the borders of the qi field retreated rapidly, unable to see the situation within the qi field clearly with their naked eyes. However, Zhao Yinglan was astonished to discover that even under her full-powered attacks, Fang Xinjian still showed no reaction. Right now, Zhao Yinglan had already unleashed 100% of her powers. Her head was covered in sweat, and her face was flushed red. She looked at Fang Xinjian in disbelief, as if she was looking at a monster. It's true that a Tier 6 divine-level expert has exerted their powers, but to think that they still can't squeeze open space. There's also no true Tier 6 divine-level spatial translocation power. Fang Xinjian slowly sensed the various changes in Zhao Yinglan's gang qis. That's it? He threw a disappointed glance at Zhao Yinglan. Is this the power of a Tiangang realm expert? Ah! Amidst the piercing screams and the intense friction between the gang qis, there seemed to be countless steel bars colliding against each other in the qi field. Zhao Yinglan's body seemed to be burning up. There seemed to be gang qis smashing down from the heavens, and there seemed to be earthly fiends charging up from the earth. The two gushes of qi activity, the heavens and the earth, clashed fiercely. It was as if the heavens and the earth had collided. A power that could tear the entire serene mountain range into a great canyon erupted fiercely in this space that was less than 100 square meters. Chapter 10:21. At this moment, Zhao Yinglan had stirred up the powers of the Tiangang qis and Disha qis in the world, unleashing 200% of her powers. Countless blood vessels throughout her body popped up. As the core of the external powers, her body seemed as if it would collapse at any moment. However, under the eruption of her qi field, Fang Xinjian took one step at a time, allowing the waves of destructive powers to tear his body apart. He walked up to Zhao Yinglan and grabbed out under her astonished gaze. Scram! Faced with Fang Xinjian's grabbing hand, the Tiangang qis and Disha qis, which had almost condensed into a material state, gushed out from Zhao Yinglan's mouth. They shot out like positron cannons, cutting across the sky. Wherever they passed by, everything in the world would disintegrate. Over 10 mountains along the way were wiped out. However, at the next moment, Fang Xinjian's big hand had already gone against the flow and pushed out along the destructive powers. He forcefully pushed the Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese back into Zhao Yinglan's mouth. Zhao Yinglan, whose mouth had been grabbed, was unable to react in time. She was tossed toward the sky by Fang Xinjian like a rag doll. Violent powers kept on exploding on her body, and the gang cheese all over Zhao Yinglan's body shattered. However, just as she was tossed out a distance of 1 meter, she was once again pulled back by the big hand. She was then smashed fiercely toward the ground. Boom! Piercing white light soared into the sky, and the rumbling sounds of thunder seemed to explode next to everyone's ears. The entire serene mountain trembled intensely, as if an earth dragon was overturning its body. When the white light gradually dissipated and the world returned to normal, everyone could only see that all the buildings on the platform had turned into ashes, and the entire mountain peak had been shaved off by over 100 meters. Right now, Zhao Yinglan was sprawled on the ground. Her clothes were in tatters, and her face was covered in dirt. She was like a commoner who had escaped from a chaotic war. Her head, which had been high up in the air, was now completely lowered, and the gang cheese that had surrounded her earlier had also completely disappeared. Fang Xinjian stood before her, appearing to be unscathed. Most of his attention was still focused on slowly sensing and deducing the secrets to the gang cheese. Elder Li and the others rushed over. Sect Master! Master! Kill Fang Xian! Protect the sect leader! Stop! Zhao Yinglan waved her hand to stop everyone's actions and slowly crawled up from the ground. However, she had already used up almost all of her powers. A hint of bitterness flashed at the corners of her lips as she said slowly, "From today onward, the illusory emotions path will listen to the great Jin dynasty's emperor. Those who disobey will be expelled from the sect." Her words were earth-shattering, and many young disciples immediately started shouting. However, most of the elites and elders remained silent. Their gazes were filled with wariness and astonishment as they looked at Fang Xinjian. They found it hard to imagine how high Fang Xian's martial arts were to be able to make Zhao Yinglan submit in such a submissive manner. Fu Daoxian, who was at the side, opened her mouth slightly, her face full of shock. It could be said that ever since she started practicing martial arts, her master, Zhao Yinglan, had always been an insurmountable mountain. She looked down on everyone with the power of a Tiangang realm expert, standing at the pinnacle of the martial arts world. However, right now, this mountain had completely collapsed before her. After Fang Xinjian threw a glance toward Zhao Yinglan, he nodded slightly. "You're smart. Arrange a room for me and then bring over all the secret manuals from your illusory emotions path." Hearing Fang Xinjian's instructions, Zhao Yinglan turned her head and said to the disciples who were still in a daze, "Didn't you hear what the emperor said? Hurry up and go." 2 hours later, the last secret manual was slowly closed. Fang Xinjian closed his eyes, and there seemed to be countless illusory emotions paths martial arts flashing rapidly in his mind. The illusory emotions paths martial arts could be said to be extensive and profound in this world. The circulation and changes of essential cheese and gang cheese had almost reached a limit. This was especially so for the illusory emotions path's greatest achievement, the illusory demonic rotation. It could even bring forth the astral gang cheese above the 9 heavens and the Disha cheese below the 9 earths to combine together, forming an attack that was like heavenly punishment. Fang Xinjian kept thinking about Zhao Yinglan's final attack in his mind, bringing forth the world's powers. Although she was still defeated by me, the final effect of this move was to shatter a little space. At the thought of this, Fang Xinjian was slightly surprised. After all, shattering space was something that was impossible in Miracle World. Based on Fang Xinjian's understanding, it was almost impossible for space to be shattered. However, such a thing had been done by a cultivator in Middle-earth. The crux lies in this world. Be it the astral gang cheese or the Disha cheese, both of them are definitely not simple. Fang Xingjian opened up his left palm and grabbed downwards, catching a stream of disha cheese in his hand. Then he grabbed toward the sky with his right hand, catching a stream of Tiangang cheese from the outer heavens. There's an aura of life in it. These two streams of powers are alive. But why are they willing to be made use of by others? When Zhao Yinglan saw this scene, her eyes narrowed slightly. She appeared calm on the surface, but great waves were surging in her heart. To think that he's able to gather the astral gang cheese and disha cheese just like that? What on earth is his realm? Just then, Fang Shijian's gaze turned over. Zhao Yinglan and Fu Daoxian felt as if their entire bodies were instantly pierced through by sword light. Your illusory emotions path should also have the martial arts legacy left behind by the Demon Emperor 300 years ago, right? Where is it? Hearing Fang Xingjian's question, Zhao Yinglan let out a breath and smiled bitterly. Back then, the Demon Emperor's realm was too high. Although our demon sect's 7 paths fought several life and death battles in order to snatch the secret manuals written by the Demon Emperor back then, over the past 300 years, no one has been able to unravel the profoundness behind them. Just as Fang Xingjian was subduing the illusory emotions path and deriving the profoundness of the demon sect's martial arts and the heavenly spirits and earthly fiends, far away in the southwest of Middle-earth, in a dense forest, a youth in blood-red clothes stood proudly at the peak of the mountain. When he opened and closed his eyes, there seemed to be a blood-red light. Within the blood-red light, there seemed to be a bloody rain and a foul wind. There was also a slowly spinning vortex that hid a surging sea of blood. A young lady in emerald green clothes stood beside him. She bowed and reported, "Young master, the White Bone Path sect master has been subdued by Heavenly Yiksha and White Azura. He's currently on the way." "All right." The crimson-robed young man laughed as he looked down at the mountains and rivers beneath his feet. A sense of pride surged in his chest. Now that the mountains and rivers have been destroyed and the smoke of war is everywhere, it is a great opportunity for my Blood River Path to sweep across the world and rebuild the mountains and rivers. I've endured for so many years, allowing that demonic woman from the illusory emotions path to do whatever she wants. Now the time has finally come. The young lady in emerald green clothes said fervently, "Young master is a heaven-blessed cultivator. How can that demonic woman Zhao be a match for you? In this world, only you, young lord, are qualified to ascend to the throne. There are still people among the heroes of the world. For example, the strongest successor nurtured by the 3 mountains 5 peaks, Shaoshan. This person is also a heaven-blessed cultivator. I've clashed with him 3 times, but we've always ended in a draw. He's my greatest rival in this lifetime." Just then, several hundred demon sect disciples were escorted to the foot of the mountain. The weakest among these several hundred demon sect experts were at the Xiantian realm. Not only had the 10 or so people in the lead stepped into the Disha realm, but their auras were also deep and unfathomable, far surpassing that of ordinary experts. However, the most eye-catching ones were still the few people in the lead. One of them was a white-clothed man who seemed to be floating in the air, appearing as if he would break away from this world at any moment. His face was extremely thin and weak, with almost no flesh to be seen. It was as if he was just a skeleton. "They're here." At the sight of this scene, a hint of excitement flashed in the eyes of the young man in blood-red clothes. "I've already unraveled the secrets of the Demon Emperor's martial arts. As long as I gather all of the Demon Emperor's legacies from the demon sect's 7 paths, even Xiao Shun won't be a match for me." The young lady in emerald green clothes dropped to her knees abruptly and said agitatedly, "Young lord, you're mighty. You'll definitely be able to unify the demon sect's 7 paths, defeat the 3 mountains 4 peaks, take over Middle-earth's 12 regions, and establish a foundation that will last for a long time." The young man in blood-red clothes smiled, and with a move, he drifted down the mountain. "Let's go." Let us see where the White Bone Immortal has hidden the White Bone Path's Demon Emperor's legacies. Chapter 10:22. The young man in crimson clothes landed at the foot of the mountain and appeared before the people from the White Bone Path. At the sight of the young man in crimson clothes, the guards in the surroundings immediately threw punches and kicks at him, forcing many of the White Bone Path's disciples to drop to their knees. Kneel down. Why aren't you kneeling after seeing the young master? Two other guards wanted to press down the skeleton-like man in the lead, but they were stopped by the young man in crimson clothes with a wave of his hand. The skeleton-like man straightened his back, and there seemed to be no hint of fear in his eyes. He looked straight at the young man in crimson clothes and said, "Blood Sea, you sent people to attack our White Bone Path and instigated an internal strife in the sacred sect. The others won't let you off." "Let me off?" Blood Sea smiled, and the blood vortexes in his eyes seemed to be spinning increasingly faster. He said calmly, "It's still uncertain who won't let who off. White Bone Immortal, I'll tell you the truth. I'm a heaven-blessed cultivator and have even deciphered the legacy of the Demon Emperor in our Blood River path. In the future, it's inevitable that I'll unify the sacred sect's 7 paths and even rule over the world." "Impossible." Hearing Blood Sea's words, the White Bone Immortal's first reaction was disbelief. The Demon Emperor's legacy has been around for over 300 years. Over these years, there have been many outstanding people in our sacred sect, but none of them have been able to decipher its profoundness. They are them, and I am me. Blood Sea waved his hand, interrupting the White Bone Immortal's questions. As he spoke, the White Bone Immortal felt the gang cheese in his body seething faintly. There was a feeling as if they had left his body and were flowing toward Blood Sea. This, under the White Bone Immortal's astonished gaze, Blood Sea grabbed his head and felt the gang cheese in his body gushing out like a great river, gushing rapidly toward the other party's body. As the gang cheese decreased rapidly, the White Bone Immortal's entire body started to turn yellow and thin. His eyes revealed a hint of disbelief. This is the Demon Emperor's star-swallowing treasure mirror. You really deciphered the profoundness of the Demon Emperor's martial arts? Blood Sea absorbed almost half of the White Bone Immortal's gang cheese before tossing him onto the ground. He said calmly, "The Demon Emperor's martial path uses the heavenly heart to replace his own heart, relying on his will to control the entire world. Above stellar energy was the ability to absorb the stellar energy cultivated by all the sects in the world without being affected. Tell me about your White Bone Path's Demon Emperor inheritance. Otherwise, I'll turn you into a cripple without any martial arts, and the White Bone Path will be erased from the world." The White Bone Immortal collapsed to the ground like a pile of mud. He looked at the sea of blood in front of him, and his eyes dimmed. After a moment of silence, he nodded. "Since you've really deciphered the Demon Emperor's martial arts, then the unification of the demon sect is naturally the will of the heavens. I say." Everyone in the surroundings immediately retreated over 1,000 meters away, leaving the White Bone Immortal to slowly narrate the contents of the Demon Emperor's legacy to Blood Sea. Clearly, the White Bone Path had been passing down this sacred sect's supreme profoundness through word of mouth for generations. A long while later, Blood Sea let out a deep exhale, and the 2 blood-colored vortexes in his eyes seemed to seethe even more violently. The White Bone Immortal exchanged a glance with Blood Sea, feeling as if even his gang cheese and flesh were not under his control. What are you trying to do? Blood Sea. You said that you'll let me off." Amidst the agonizing cries, the White Bone Immortal's physical body started to break down abruptly. The remaining half of the gang cheese in his body left his body, sweeping up lumps of flesh and blood, and turning into a blood-colored vortex that appeared in midair. At the sight of this scene, everyone in the White Bone Path let out furious bellows. A few Disher Realm elders even struggled to their feet, dashing out toward Blood Sea as if they had gone mad. However, they were soon suppressed by the Blood River Path's disciples in the surroundings. Blood Sea. You'll die a horrible death. The other people won't let you off. Zhao Yinglan is currently comprehending the highest profoundness of the illusory demonic rotation. After she comes out from her seclusion, she'll definitely kill you and take revenge for us. Hearing these agonizing cries, the corners of Blood Sea's lips curled up into a hint of a cold smile. He took a step forward and appeared before everyone as if he had teleported. Don't worry. It won't be long before they come down to accompany you guys. As Blood Sea spoke, he opened his mouth and spat out an intense blood-colored gang cheese. In that instant, the area within a range of 1,000 meters was filled with the stench of blood. Everyone felt as if they had fallen into a sea of blood. This blood-colored gang cheese seethed like a blood river that came from hell. There were even many agonizing cries and bellows ringing out from it, making one's heart palpitate. The blood river swept up the blood-colored vortex that was formed from the white bone immortal's disintegration. Then with a rumble, it charged out toward the people from the white bone path. Amidst a series of astonished cries, agonizing cries and furious bellows, the blood river swept past, and countless white bone path's disciples were drawn in. In the blink of an eye, they turned into a pool of blood, becoming a part of the blood river. Even Disha realm cultivators were only able to put up a resistance for a few seconds before they melted into the blood river in the blink of an eye. The seething blood river reverberated in the sky, containing the essence, energy, and essential cheese of the many white bone path's disciples. At the next moment, blood rain came down from the blood river, dripping onto the bodies of the blood river path's disciples. Countless blood river path's disciples fought to be the first to engulf and spit out the blood rain that came down from the sky. With each drop of blood they absorbed, as the blood water fused into their flesh and essential cheese, they could sense that their physical bodies and essential cheese were getting stronger rapidly. Their foundations were also getting increasingly stable, and even their spirits felt as if they had been reborn. The most eye-catching ones were an old man and a young man. The old man had a hunched back and was bald. He was bathed in the blood rain, and green veins popped up on his skin. Streams of blood light appeared under his body. The young man's long blood-colored hair swayed in the wind. Countless amounts of blood rain fused into it, causing his blood-colored hair to appear increasingly demonic and emit an intense blood-colored light. These two people were the two strongest experts from the Blood River path aside from Blood Sea, Heavenly Yiksha and White Azura. Other than the White Bone Path's many disciples' essence cheese, most of the White Bone Immortals' essence cheese were also engulfed and digested by the two of them under Blood Sea's special control. The young lady in emerald green clothes stood at the side, looking at the two people who were bathed in the bloodlight. She sighed inwardly. Heavenly Yiksha and White Azura were famous experts from evil sects in the pugilistic world to begin with. Ever since they secretly joined Young Master's side and received personal guidance from Young Master, both of them have stepped into the Tiangang realm. Right now, the two of them can even take down the White Bone Immortal if they join forces. This time around, Young Master has also used the Blood River to engulf the essence, energy, and essential cheese of several hundred White Bone Path's disciples. Their strength has improved even further, as if seeing through the young lady in emerald green clothes worry. Blood Sea sent a voice transmission. Don't worry, Fei Li. Even if these two people's strength were to increase by 10 times, I'd still be able to suppress them with a flip of my palm. In this world, my only opponent has always been Shao Xun. Chapter 10:23. A long howl rang out as a series of explosive sounds rang out from the hunchbacked Heavenly Yiksha's body. He slowly straightened his back. My hunchback is a result of me being overly anxious when cultivating in the past, causing my essential chi to run amok. It's something that medicine can't cure. I didn't expect that there would be a day where I can be cured. A hint of joy flashed on his face as he prostrated toward Blood Sea. Thank you, young master, for granting me this. Just then, a series of sharp whistles rang out, and White Azura, who was dressed in white and had a head full of blood, also stopped circulating his martial arts. His blood-colored long hair gradually shrank and changed color, and the smell of blood on his hair gradually disappeared. He now looked like an ordinary white-clothed scholar. After 30 years of hard work, I've finally mastered the Crimson Devil Aura skill. A hint of complacency flashed in the young man's eyes as he thanked Blood Sea. Thank you, young lord, for granting us our wish. Blood Sea nodded, and his eyes, which contained blood-colored vortexes, looked toward the two of them. After being swept by this blood-colored gaze, the two of them instantly felt their vital energy and blood seethe intensely, as if they were going to shoot out uncontrollably. The image of the white bone immortal's body disintegrating subconsciously appeared in their minds. The duo's countenances instantly froze, and the excitement they felt from their great progress in martial arts also cooled down. Their gazes toward Blood Sea became increasingly respectful. The two of them understood that compared to their improvements, after Blood Sea had deciphered the White Bone Path's Demon Emperor legacy, his martial arts had probably become even more unfathomable. Blood Sea looked at the two of them, nodded, and said, "Very good. With your current abilities, it's enough for you to defeat the various sect masters of the demon sect's 7 paths. I'll be going into seclusion to comprehend the Demon Emperor's legacy. The two of you will lead our Blood River Path's disciples to fight against the remaining 5 sects of the Illusory Emotions Path. Remember, although your martial arts have improved greatly, you still cannot underestimate the enemy and advance rashly. Furthermore, do not leak the news. Each of the 5 sects has a Heavenly Dipper realm expert. You must join hands and break them one by one." Serene Mountain, within the headquarters of the Illusory Emotions Path. Fang Shijian's fingertip gently swept across the air before him. Although it appeared to be a light fingertip, it gave off an extremely heavy feeling. There were even kacha-kacha sounds ringing out, and a series of colorful lights seemed to be flowing around his fingertip. Right now, Fang Xinjian's fingers contained waves of majestic power. If they were in Miracle World, cracks would probably have appeared in the surrounding space from the pressure. Many black cracks could be seen extending out from his fingertip. Fang Xinjian knew that this was because the space in Miracle World had always been fragmented and fragmented. It was just that the cracks in space were usually too fine and could not be seen. They would only appear when there was a sufficient amount of pressure. Even so, even though out, Fang Shijian out, they were out in Miracle out. Out in out in out in out in out in. Of world out. Out out out, he out 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 out. Out out. In and. In of, in out of a, out from, t. The entire world is in a complete space. To be able to make out the space as one, it can only be the smallest space. At the thought of this, Fang Xinjian could not help but feel astonished. To achieve something like this was even more difficult than compressing a space the size of the sun into the size of a thumb. This was especially so when one not only had to compress space, but also ensure that most of the laws of physics remained unchanged. Fang Xinjian's finger flicked up slightly, and a gush of Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese gathered on his fingertip. And based on the situation of the Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese, this world might even be man-made. Looking at the gush of Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese on his fingertips, Fang Xinjian slowly sensed the intent within it. The Disha cheese contain a unique intent, just like a person's soul. At this moment, his martial will seemed to have penetrated deep into the ground, right into the so-called Disha layer. It was as if he could see a tremendous intent sleeping within. The reason why Fang Xinjian did not continue to unlock the 72 acupuncture points in the Disha realm was because he did not want the intent in the Disha layer to contaminate him. Above the heavens, the ferocious Gang cheese continued to accumulate energy. To Fang Xinjian, this was power. There was power hidden in the heavens, and there was intent hidden in the ground. After the two powers merged into one, it seemed to have formed a true life, and a new consciousness started to awaken. Is this a coincidence, or could it be? Fang Xinjian's gaze pierced through void space, looking at an ant on a tree outside the house. At the next moment, the ant seemed to have been crushed by an invisible sharp blade. Its body shattered and it died. At the same time that the ant shattered, Fang Xinjian could sense that there seemed to be two gushes of aura, one clear and one turbid, rising from the other party's body. The clear cheese rose beyond the heavens, while the turbid cheese fell into the earth. Could this be man-made? If it was really done by an almighty expert who performed the means of storing a mountain into a mustard seed, taking an area of the world into the smallest spatial scale, causing the world and space to become one, and even setting up the circulation system of Tiangang and Disha, then it would be terrifying. It was a pity that no one in the Xiantian realm, Disha realm, or Tiangang realm had been able to find out the truth. The legendary Great Tao realm used one's will to operate the world, using the heavenly heart to replace one's own heart. Fang Xinjian could only place his hopes on the Great Tao realm having an intrinsic understanding of this world. He recalled Zhao Yinglan's final attack in his mind. Even now, he still had a deep memory of the lingering effect of shattering void space. It was a pity that Zhao Yinglan was able to do it. His strength was 1,000 times stronger than hers, but he was still unable to shatter space. In the end, it still related to the Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese. The Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese are involved in the profoundness of this world's circulation. Therefore, cultivators who cultivate the Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese can even have a great impact on the circulation of this world. If I can comprehend the profoundness within, it'll be a great improvement to my sword arts. A few hours later, Zhao Yinglan brought Fu Daoxian back to the small courtyard. She slowly took out a book page that was neither gold nor silver. The book page was filled with densely packed words, but every single sentence was unfathomable and abnormally profound, making it hard for others to decipher it. Zhao Yinglan said, "Back then, the demon emperor picked a wondrous stone from beyond the heavens and refined it into a 7-page book. He then used his unrivaled martial arts comprehension of the Great Tao realm on it. It's a pity that the later generations are unworthy. Once the demon emperor died, the demon sect was split into 7, and each of them obtained a page of the book. Over the past 300 years, although countless people have tried to decipher the profoundness of the demon emperor's legacy, no one has succeeded." Fang Xinjian nodded. Simultaneously, he picked up the book in front of him and swept his gaze across it, scanning the contents into his mind. However, even he was unable to understand the contents written on it. It was because the densely packed words looked like gibberish to him. They were all irrelevant words that were connected together. Chapter 10:24. Seeing that Fang Xinjian's brows were furrowed slightly, Zhao Yinglan added, "For the past 300 years, countless heroes from our sacred gate have wanted to unravel the profoundness within. It's a pity that no matter what methods they used, they were unable to find out the profoundness." While Zhao Yinglan was speaking, Fang Xinjian had already tried to use all sorts of skipping, sentence preamble, and other patterns in an attempt to unravel the profoundness within. However, all of them failed. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Interesting. Is it written in special ciphertext?" Fang Xinjian raised his head, looked at Zhao Yinglan, and asked, "Have you guys tried to search for ciphertext, codes, and the like left behind by the demon emperor?" Zhao Yinglan let out a soft sigh and said, "Someone has tried long ago, but it was to no avail." Therefore, during this period of time, Fang Xinjian stayed in the Serene Mountain to analyze the legacy left behind by the demon emperor. At the same time, he continued to rely on his own powers to derive this world's martial arts. He combined the great Jin dynasty's royal family's secret teachings and the illusory demonic paths, several hundred years' worth of manuals. He was already very familiar with this world's essential Qi martial art. However, if he wanted to understand the circulation nature of the Tiangang Qis and Disha Qis, he would still need time unless he could understand the profoundness of the great Tao realm. Of course, it was not just the clone he had left in the Serene Mountain who was deriving martial arts. In the great Jin dynasty's palace, Fang Xinjian looked at the Tiangang Qis and Disha Qis and said softly, "There's an abundance of information contained within the Tiangang Qis and Disha Qis. If I can solve them, I might be able to obtain a tremendous amount of information like the ether particles." Fang Xinjian, how long are you going to keep me locked up for? Let me out. With my royal heavenly great art, I'll be able to help you derive this world's martial arts. The person who spoke came from a long picture scroll. The entire picture scroll was about the height of a person, and the prince was standing in it. It was as if he was standing in a mirror, shouting out to Fang Xinjian. The painting before him was the result of Fang Xinjian's continuous derivation of essential Qi martial arts and high-dimensional sword arts during this period of time. Initially, the sealing paper that Erbian had given him was only the size of a palm. However, in the process of deriving high-dimensional sword arts, he had also been inspired by Zhao Yinglan's shattering of space and achieved another breakthrough in his high-dimensional sword arts, turning the palm-sized sealing paper into a picture scroll that was the height of a person. This was equivalent to increasing the overlap between this two-dimensional world and the real world. However, the prince was still dissatisfied with this situation. After all, no matter how big the cage was, it was still a cage. Hearing the prince's question, Fang Xinjian said, "You've read all the martial arts manuals I've read recently. Do you really have nothing to learn? You can come out if you want, but you have to tell me all your martial arts." Before the picture scroll that the prince was standing in, there were many pages of martial arts manuals. Clearly, Fang Xinjian had also shown her this world's vital energy martial arts during this period of time. Fang Xinjian was naturally extremely interested in the royal heavenly great art that prince had used to temper one's martial will. However, the prince shook his head and said proudly, "My royal heavenly great art is the ultimate technique of the ascendant heavenly sect, one of the Western land's 3 supreme sections. How can these shallow martial arts be a match for it?" She then threw a sly glance at Fang Xinjian and said, "It's fine if you want me to hand it over, but you have to use that martial art of yours that you've sealed up to exchange for it." Fang Xinjian said, "That's fine, but you have to hand over the royal heavenly great art first. After I've ascertained that there's no problem, I'll teach you the sword arts." The prince let out a snort, gritted her teeth and said, "You appear to be a serious person, but you're actually full of lies. Who knows if you'll fulfill your promise or not?" Fang Xinjian said calmly, "Maria, ever since we met, I've always been a man of my word. The one who's going back on his word is you, right?" "I don't care." The prince was so angry that she stomped her feet. "If you don't hand over your sword arts to me, I won't hand over the royal heavenly great art." Right now, she could tell that although Fang Xinjian was able to keep her in the seal, his foundation and martial will were still inferior to hers. This meant that he could only imprison her but was unable to launch any effective attacks against her. Naturally, he would not be able to interrogate or torture her. Fang Xinjian shook his head and tapped out with a finger. In that instant, streams of light and shadows changed, covering up before the prince like a piece of cloth. "What are you trying to do?" The prince crossed her arms before her chest and said in disdain, "No matter what you do, I won't give in. The royal heavenly great art is the ascendant heavenly sect's ultimate technique. Back then, in order to learn it, I put in a lot of effort. How can I possibly hand it over to you so easily?" Simultaneously, the prince's figure slowly appeared on the light screen. The prince frowned, as if she did not understand what the other party was trying to do. At the next moment, The prince in the light screen started to take off her clothes. Very soon, she appeared to be in a state where her clothes did not cover her body. Her chest, lower body, and the snow-white and delicate skin all over her body were all exposed. The beautiful swaying mounds on her chest were completely exposed to the air, causing the prince's cheeks to flush up and her body to tremble. "You!" The crown prince suddenly stuttered. "No, no, you shameless thing, quickly put it away!" "Is it effective?" Fang Xinjian threw a surprised glance at the prince and said, "Maria, your martial arts foundation is too strong. Even I can't really hurt you physically. Therefore, I can only try a mental attack. I didn't expect it to be effective." Why, it's not effective at all." The prince bellowed with a flushed face. "You idiot! If you still don't stop, I swear that you'll never be able to get the Royal Heavenly Great Arts legacy." Right now, the prince no longer had the domineering air of a king. She was like a young girl who had been molested, and her mind was in a mess. Right now, the thing that filled her mind the most was, why? How can Fang Xinjian know what I look like? Fang Xinjian said calmly, "Maria, as a Tier 6 divine level cultivator, do you still care so much about a mere body? It seems that you're much more attuned to the customs of the secular world than I am." As they spoke, the prince's naked image disappeared. The prince finally heaved a sigh of relief. However, she soon glared fiercely at Fang Xinjian, and the killing intent in her eyes seemed to have condensed into a material form. She said hesitantly, Why do you know that I saw it with my eyes. At our realm, we'll be able to instantly measure any size with a single glance. You've even forgotten this? It seems that your mind has really been greatly stimulated, Fang Xinjian said. Stimulated my ass. The prince brought along a myriad of golden light and collided fiercely against the barrier. The engulfing golden marshal will seem to want to destroy everything, but it was unable to take another step forward. It was as if the tremors and loud sounds in the two-dimensional world could be heard even in the real world. Fang Xinjian looked at the prince and said, "Mental attacks are very effective. Maria, it seems that you're still fixated on your identity as a female. Based on the secular world's point of view, a beauty like you should be very afraid that your naked appearance will be seen by commoners. Enough." The prince's expression was like that of a little tiger. He glared fiercely at Fang Xinjian and said, "Let's change the conditions regarding the Royal Heavenly Great Art." Chapter 10:25. After moving his limbs and taking in a breath of fresh air, the prince broke into a satisfied smile. She had finally returned to the real world. Fang Xinjian stood next to her and said, "You can say it now, right?" The prince threw a sideways glance toward Fang Xinjian as if he was looking at trash. A short moment later, he still read out a paragraph of scripture. It was the cultivation method for the Royal Heavenly Great Palm imprint. Half an hour later, Fang Xinjian nodded. "I didn't expect that this martial art isn't just a technique to defend against enemies. It's also a cultivation technique that harmonizes the internal and external forces, increasing one's foundation and potential." The prince smiled proudly and said, "Of course. This Royal Heavenly Great Palm imprint is the general imprint of the Royal Heavenly Great Art. Not only is it extremely powerful and domineering, but it's also extremely detailed. It can increase anyone's potential and talent." This was not the first time Fang Xinjian had seen an ultimate art that could increase one's talent. The most amazing thing was probably what Purple Flames had done back then. It had instantly increased his talent by 1,000 or even 100 times. Then there was the mystical prince that his mother had passed down. It allowed him to continue receiving information from the world, ceaselessly increasing his talent, knowledge, and experience. However, this Royal Heavenly Great Palm imprint was even rarer to Fang Xinjian. It could increase the talent of anyone who cultivated it, and it did not require any resources to be depleted. The only thing he needed was people, the contents of the royal heavenly great palm imprint that the prince had mentioned earlier flashed in his mind. Fang Xinjian put his palms together, intertwined his fingers, and moved his hands like a blooming lotus flower. It was the fundamental imprint of the royal heavenly great palm imprint, the live's wisdom imprint. As the saying went, the index finger was connected to the heart. In the research of the ascendant heavenly sex predecessors, as the fingers changed, there would also be corresponding changes in one's consciousness. This was the circulation of the brain through the imprint. Even an ordinary person would be able to train their brain and increase their intelligence if they persisted in forming imprints and moving their fingers daily. At the divine level, they would be able to stimulate the various changes in their martial will through imprint. As this imprint was performed, Fang Xinjian's martial will also started circulating, causing his body to appear a little illusory. At the next moment, in void space, Fang Xinjian seemed to be able to sense that various colorful lights had appeared in the entire world. It was the glow of countless lives. This is fate. As the throne that I occupy, the fates of everyone in the divine capital are linked to mine. In Fang Xinjian's vision, the entire divine capital was occupied by colorful light. Meanwhile, outside the divine capital, there was only darkness and nothingness. This was because the area he was currently ruling over was only the divine capital. At the next moment, his hand seals moved again, and Fang Xinjian's attention suddenly gathered onto a light spot in the divine capital. He could immediately sense that Fang Xinjian's brain had formed some sort of connection with his consciousness. Then Fang Xinjian's hand seals started to circulate intensely, and the surrounding void space seemed to produce some sort of wave. Many invisible illusionary lines extended out from his consciousness, connecting to the countless humans in the divine capital. What is wisdom? Wisdom is the ability to sense, know, remember, comprehend, associate, feel emotions, logic, and calculate. This live's wisdom seal can gather the wisdom of all lives and make use of the knowledge, memories, comprehend, associate, feel emotions, logic, and calculate of countless lives. At this moment, the brains of countless people in the divine capital were slowly linked to Fang Xinjian's consciousness. It was as if they had formed a cluster of cloud computing, contributing their memories, comprehend, knowledge, and calculate to Fang Xinjian. Even the part of calculate in everyone's brains that they were not using could be used by Fang Xinjian. It's no wonder it's called the Ascendant Heavenly Sect. This martial technique requires the cultivator to do things of a ruler. The more people they rule over, the stronger the prowess of the live's wisdom seal, right? Fang Xinjian's eyes shone with the glow of wisdom. Just the reinforcement from the countless experts and commoners in the divine capital alone was enough to make him feel stronger. He could imagine how strong the power of the live's wisdom seal would be once the number of people under his rule reached several tens of thousands or even several billions. At that time, he would be able to make use of the wisdom of all lives when he was deriving martial arts and researching the truth of any world. He would be able to mobilize the excess calculation abilities of the brains of several billions or even tens of billions of people to help him do the calculations. The stronger the people under his rule were, the lesser the places where he would need to use his brain, and the more excess calculation abilities he would be able to mobilize. Fang Xinjian finally understood the Ascendant Heavenly Sect's cultivation method. He looked at the prince and said, "Each of the experts in the Ascendant Heavenly Sect who are at Tier 5 of the divine level or above have probably nurtured many countries in their divine country, right? You guys might even have taken over many countries in parallel world." Our Ascendant Heavenly Sect rules over the mortal world to bring benefits to the people, raise their intelligence, and comply with the heavens. Is there anything wrong with that? The prince said slowly, "All right, I've already given you the cultivation method for the Royal Heavenly Great Palm imprint. You can talk about your sword arts now, right? At the mention of Fang Xinjian's sword arts, even the prince's eyes could not help but flash with a hint of anticipation. After all, when she was fighting against the prince, Fang Xinjian's sword arts, which went straight to the essence and cut through her foundations, had taken her by surprise. If it was not because she had painstakingly cultivated the royal heavenly great art for many years and had an extremely powerful martial will, she would probably have been wiped out within a few moves. Moreover, the move which had sealed her in the end was a top-notch powerful move which she had never seen before. Therefore, the agreement between her and Fang Xinjian was that Fang Xinjian would let her out and then the two of them would exchange great martial arts. It was just that they would be spread out over a year, exchanging a portion each time. Fang Xinjian tried out the Lives Wisdom seal from the Royal Heavenly Great Palm imprint and ascertained that there were no problems with it. Therefore, with a tap of his finger, a stream of sword intent entered the prince's mind. Infiltrating void sword technique? Hints of sword intent flashed in the prince's eyes. Good sword technique. Although you're shameless and despicable, your sword arts aren't bad. She immediately started to circulate her martial will at full power, deriving this sword technique. Fang Xinjian once again immersed himself in the research of the Royal Heavenly Great Palm imprint. Other than the Lives Wisdom seal, which could increase one's foundation and aptitude, there were also various imprints for defending against enemies. Just as Fang Xinjian and the prince were having an exchange of martial arts in the palace, at the Divine Martial Pass in the northeast of Jing region, a 30,000-man army was gathered there. Various military flags, tents, and smoke hung outside the Divine Martial Pass like they covered up the sky and sun. The general on guard at the Divine Martial Pass looked at the great army before him, and his countenance turned pale. This is... His gaze swept past the word Exin on the military camp's flag, and he said with a grim countenance, "This is Prince Xian's army." Chapter 10:26. Simultaneously, a white-robed general charged out on horseback from the enemy's military camp. He stopped less than 100 meters away from the Divine Martial Pass city walls and shouted loudly, "Everyone in the Divine Martial Pass, listen up! The great Jin dynasty's Prince Xian has led a 300,000-strong army to rescue the Emperor and has traveled a great distance to provide reinforcements to the divine capital. Quickly open the city gates and welcome the Imperial Army." Hearing his words, the entire Divine Martial Pass immediately fell into chaos. The faces of the generals guarding the city turned pale, and the spears in their hands trembled slightly. To think that it's really Prince Xian. The great Jin dynasty's Prince Xian was the older brother of the late emperor. He had grown up in a military camp since young and had always been advancing vigorously on his martial path. At the age of 15, he had already stepped into the Disha realm. Right now, no one knew what level his martial arts had reached. Moreover, he was not a boorish fellow who only knew how to cultivate martial arts. He was good at war and had great achievements in the management of the army. After the late emperor succeeded to the throne, he had been guarding the northern borders and was the late emperor's most trusted pillar to protect the country. There were many strategists and generals under him, and he had forged the entire Beiyuan state into an iron bucket. Could it be that Prince Xian has rebelled as well? The brows of the generals guarding the city furrowed tightly. In fact, as the flames of war rose in the world, there were rumors that Prince Xian in the north had rebelled. He had massacred the Northern Plains region's regional overseer manor and taken control of the entire Northern Plains region. In the military camp, a young man who wore a purple-gold crown and an ochre-yellow robe stood proudly among all the generals. True energy condensed in his eyes, and they emitted waves of divine light as he ceaselessly sized up the Divine Martial Pass in the distance. This young man was Prince Xian's eldest son, Fang Wangshu, the vanguard general of the army that had come to rescue the king. This time around, Prince Xian had first defeated the plains elites and wiped out 500,000 soldiers from the plains, causing the various tribes in the plains to struggle at death's door and retreat into the snowy plains in the north. They wouldn't dare to head south for at least 10 years. After that, they mobilized the 300,000 cavalrymen from the northern lands, bringing with them a surging might to the south. Along the way, they were undefeated and victorious in every battle. From the northern plains province to the Serenity province, they fought all the way to the Divine Martial Pass. Along the way, most of the bandits and soldiers either fled upon hearing the news or opened the city gates wide to welcome them. It was rare to encounter a few rebellious armies, but they were all defeated by these elites who had been fighting in the north for many years. This also caused the generals and soldiers under Prince Xian to become increasingly arrogant, looking down on the armies of the feudal vassals in Middle-earth. One of the generals beside Feng Wangshu said, "As long as the general guarding this Shenwei Pass still has some brains, he will probably open the gates and welcome our army. When that time comes, the entire Jing province will be in front of us. Within 3 days, we will be able to reach the divine capital. This is a great merit." Feng Wangshu was the first to attack Jing province and even trample over the divine capital. At the thought of this credit, a hint of excitement flashed in Feng Wangshu's eyes. He still had a few younger brothers watching him. Feng Wangshu's face turned cold and the killing intent in his eyes intensified. "Order the entire army to rest and reorganize for 2 hours. If the Divine Martial Pass doesn't surrender after 2 hours, I'll make sure not a single chicken or dog remains." 3 days later, in the imperial study of the imperial palace, Feng Xinjian formed a seal with both of his hands. There seemed to be an invisible airflow surging in his palms. He was mobilizing the surplus computing power in the entire divine capital to help him derive the high-dimensional sword technique. Over the past few days, he had been continuously executing the living being's wisdom seal. The more he executed it, the more he could sense the profoundness within it. It was because this technique did not simply activate the intelligence of the people under him through brute force. Instead, it made use of the computing power that the people under him did not use in their daily lives. With this, not only would the people not discover the existence of the living being's wisdom seal, but they would also be able to train the people's intelligence during this period of time when they were using the computing power, potentially raising their intelligence. As the duration of the living being's wisdom seal increased, the average intelligence of the people under him would also become increasingly stronger. Moreover, due to the prolonged period of consciousness connection and the use of intelligence, he could even faintly increase the people's obedience toward him. This could be said to be a win-win technique. Not only would it raise the cultivator's own strength, but it could also raise the entire country's potential and the people's intelligence. The Royal Heavenly Great Palm imprint from the Royal Heavenly Great Art already has such an effect. As expected, this ascendant heavenly sect mustn't be underestimated. The other 2 sects that are on the same level as them must also be extraordinary. Just as Feng Xinjian was thinking about these, an official ran into the imperial study in a hurry under the accompaniment of a young eunuch and knelt outside the door. Your Majesty!" Feng Xinjian's eyes narrowed slightly. It was as if he could see through the many obstructions and see the scene outside the divine capital. However, he still asked, "What's wrong?" That official said with a terrified expression, "Your Majesty, Prince Xian has rebelled and led 300,000 armored cavalry to head south. Right now, the vanguard troops have already arrived at the divine capital." Simultaneously, as the vanguard troops led by Feng Wangshu arrived at the divine capital, a commotion broke out in the entire divine capital. Countless rumors and gossips were flying all over the place. Some said that it was Prince Xian who had fought his way over, while others said that it was a feudal lord who had fought his way over. Some said that several tens of thousands of troops had passed by, while others said that 800,000 troops had surrounded the city. There were all sorts of rumors, causing everyone in the divine capital to be on tenterhooks. Now that Prince Exion's troops had fought their way to the divine capital, it could be said that they had astonished everyone. The entire city was in a state of panic, and there were even people who were thinking of surrendering. At the top of the divine capital, many rows of generals looked at Prince Exion's troops below the city, frowning and not saying a word. This was especially so when they sensed the military prowess and soaring pernicious auras. They wore worried expressions. The cavalry under Prince Exion has been fighting against the tribes in the plains all year round. Regardless of whether it's their martial arts realm, experience in close combat, or their cooperation, they far surpass the forbidden armies, a general said worriedly. If they were to fight outside the city, it'd probably be hard for the forbidden army and the city guards to win. However, as long as they refuse to defend the city, they won't have enough soldiers and rations to support them. They won't be able to attack. Moreover, there's still a reserve army in the divine capital that hasn't been mobilized. They can mobilize another 100,000 soldiers at any moment. But if they refuse to defend the city, another general sighed, this army is merely the vanguard. Once Prince Exion's 300,000-man army arrives. He didn't continue, but everyone already understood what he meant, and the expressions in their eyes became more and more unsightly. Prince Exion guarded the northern borders alone, causing the various tribes in the plains to tremble in fear. His name, the North Garrison King, spread throughout the world. When befriending such a character, one would naturally feel at ease. However, if they were to become enemies, it would be enough to make one tremble in fear. Just then, the Imperial Preceptor, Shen Wanzhou, stepped onto the city gate tower. Imperial Preceptor! Imperial Preceptor! Paying respects to the Imperial Preceptor. Shen Wanzhou's countenance was solemn as he looked at the troops outside the city. There seemed to be a sharp gleam flashing in his eyes. His Majesty has already handed the matter of quelling the rebel army to me. I hope that everyone will put in their best efforts and unite as one. After the rebel army is wiped out, the imperial court will naturally not mistreat everyone. This great grandmaster of the Confucian sect had been famous throughout the imperial court for many years. Regardless of whether it was his martial arts or reputation, they could suppress everyone present. The many generals naturally did not dare to act rashly. He then turned to introduce to everyone, "This is Miss Marie. She's an expert that His Majesty has invited to help us deal with the rebel army this time around." The pretty young lady standing behind Shen Wanzhou was Prince, who had been released by Fang Xingjian. However, the surrounding generals clearly did not think much of this beautiful young lady. They did not think that such a pretty young lady would have the ability to wipe out the rebel army either. Just as everyone was discussing the strategy to deal with the enemy, the troops below the city started moving. A man with a face full of stubble led 2,000 elite warriors and charged over. They were charging toward the city gate. Chapter 10:27. Release the arrows. A loud bellow rang out from the city walls, and in that instant, a myriad of arrows rained down. Each arrow contained essential chi that could penetrate metal and crack rock. However, at the same time as the arrow rain landed, the 2,000 Prince Exion's soldiers let out a loud bellow, and a chi field erupted, circling around the military formation and breaking the myriad of arrows. These 2,000 soldiers were all experts at the pinnacle of the Xiantian realm, and the bearded man in the lead was a Disha realm expert. Right now, their essential chis were connected together, erupting with a chi field. It was as if they had formed an indomitable long spear, piercing through the layers of arrow rain and piercing fiercely toward the city gates. Seeing that the arrow rain was ineffective, a few generals immediately requested to take on the battle. However, Shen Wanzhou raised his hand to stop them. This person's martial arts are very profound. If you guys go down, your lives will be in danger. Let me do it. On the contrary, Shen Wanzhou would not send out the generals under him to die one by one. He would only make a move when the other party arrived before him. On the contrary, he planned on making a move directly, using his martial arts to take down the other party. He would gain the upper hand by a show of strength and raise the morale of the people in the city. He took a step out and stood on top of the city walls. Essential qi seethed on his body, and it was as if the world within a range of several thousand meters was trembling. At the next moment, Shen Wanzhou punched out across space, and seething essential qi gathered on his fist. The essential qi rubbed against each other intensely, emitting dark green sparks. The surrounding void space became distorted like it was going to burn up. "Rebel, take my jade blood divine fist." As he punched out repeatedly, lumps of dark green qi spheres exploded toward the soldiers below the city walls. Each time the essential qi and qi field collided, a series of explosions would be brought forth, almost causing the ground to crack. The 2,000 charging soldiers were thrown off their feet, and within a short few minutes, there were soldiers who were killed by the tremors. The general in the vanguard, whose face was covered with stubble, let out a furious bellow. There were several times when he wanted to leap up and go up the city walls, but he was smashed back by Shen Wanzhou's jade blood divine fist. Although he had the reinforcement of the essential qi of 2,000 elites, he was still not a match for Shen Wanzhou, a grandmaster from the Confucian sect. Seeing that they had gained the upper hand, the soldiers on top of the city walls immediately cheered. Shen Wanzhou let out a soft bellow, and streams of white qi surged out from his head. The green flames on his fists seethed intensely. Clearly, he had circulated his powers to the extreme, wanting to kill that bearded man with a spurt of energy. However, at this moment they heard a sword hum. Within the military formation outside the city, there seemed to be a sword light soaring into the sky. At the next moment, a stream of sword qi tore through void space and slashed out from the military formation, slashing out fiercely toward Shen Wanzhou, who was on top of the city walls. Before the sword qi arrived, a sharp light had already rushed over, as if it wanted to tear everything in front of it apart. With a low bellow, Shen Wanzhou circulated his fist force to the limits and struck out with both fists, turning into a dark green fireball that went up against the incoming sword qis. A loud rumbling sound rang out. The sword energy and the fireball collided, causing violent shock waves to shoot out in all directions. Visible ripples could even be seen radiating out in all directions. The shock wave hit the city wall and collided with the aura of the Forbidden Army soldiers. However, despite having the protection of the aura, several tens of Forbidden Army soldiers still let out a series of astonished cries. They were swept out by the shock wave and fell off the city walls. Even the city walls, which had been tempered thoroughly and had countless metal materials integrated into them, kept on trembling, and many huge cracks appeared on them. Shen Wanzhou let out a stifled snort, and the dark green flames on his fists weakened significantly. His gaze toward the military formation was filled with graveness. In an instant, cheers broke out in Prince Xian's army. "General is mighty! General is mighty!" Shen Wanzhou's brows furrowed even tighter as he looked at the young man who had stepped out from the crowd. The young man wore a purple-gold crown and ochre-yellow robes, appearing to be extremely noble. Absolute monarch myriad world sword? To think that he has cultivated it to this level? The person who had stepped out from the crowd and saved that bearded man with a single sword attack was naturally the commander of this vanguard troop, Prince Xian's eldest son, Feng Wangshu. If this was a world without martial arts, it would be impossible for his 30,000-man army, with most of them being cavalry, to take down a big city like the divine capital. However, in this world with martial arts, a single person could take on several 10,000 or even several 100,000 soldiers. Feng Wangshu was naturally not satisfied with just surrounding the divine capital. With a wave of his hand, the 2,000-man army led by the bearded man started to retreat. Simultaneously, the bearded man held onto his sword with both hands and locked onto Shun Wanzhou's direction from afar. Shun Wanzhou's gaze narrowed, and he activated the Jade Blood Divine Fist once again. As green light burst out, he sent out a series of punches, smashing fiercely toward the 2,000-man army. Seeing this, Fang Wangshu let out a cold laugh and slashed out across space with his longsword. A stream of deep purple sword light soared into the sky like a purple thunderbolt descending from the sky, clashing fiercely against Shen Wanzhou's fist force. Then Fang Wangshu slashed out one sword after another toward the city walls from afar. Purple sword light went on incessantly, almost causing Shen Wanzhou to be pushed back repeatedly. Very soon, he broke through Shen Wanzhou's fist force and the Imperial Guard's chi field, causing the people on the city walls to be thrown into disarray. Roar! 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 The army of several 10,000 men outside the city all shouted. Endless essential chis gathered together, increasing the prowess of Fang Wangshu's sword chis. This was also the main trend of war in this world. Other than using the soldiers to conquer, probe, investigate, and maintain order, their greatest use was to strengthen the generals, turning the strongest generals into long spears to attack the enemy. Fang Wangshu's individual strength was actually a little weaker than Shen Wanzhou's. However, the strength of the 30,000 elites under him far surpassed that of the Imperial Guards under Shen Wanzhou. This was why Fang Wangshu was able to get the upper hand when the two of them fought. Seeing that the people on the divine capital city walls were thrown into disarray, with many generals fleeing and even Shen Wanzhou not being a match for them, the many generals on Fang Wangshu's side laughed out loud. This imperial court is really useless. To think that even the quality of the divine capital soldiers is so low. Humph. To think that Shen Wanzhou still claims to be a great grandmaster of the Confucian sect? He can't even take 10 sword attacks from the prince. I think that after we enter the divine capital, we'll capture that young Fang Xian and get him to issue an edict to abdicate. An explosive rumble rang out, and as the forbidden army was pushed back, the chi field contracted. The top of the divine capital city walls seemed to finally be unable to withstand Fang Wangshu's sword chis slashing down. Amidst a loud sound, the city walls were slashed apart, creating a huge gap. At the sight of this scene, Fang Wangshu let out a cold laugh, and the disdain in his eyes deepened. To think that the divine capital has fallen to such a state. It's only right for Father to replace it and reform the world. However, at that moment, a hand patted his shoulder, giving him such a fright that he turned around and slashed out with his sword. Who is it? However, Fang Wangshu's sword attack, which could split mountains and shatter rocks, was gently stopped by a fair and tender finger. He circulated all of his powers, but he was unable to budge at all. When he looked at the person's face, he was even more stunned by her beauty, and there was a moment of absent-mindedness. However, he reacted very quickly. Who are you? Are you going to make an enemy out of my army? The soldiers in the surroundings immediately reacted as well, dashing forward and surrounding the two of them. The prince threw a disdainful glance toward the surrounding soldiers and then looked toward Fang Wangshu with some disgust. He said calmly, "You're just an ant. Are you even fit to ask who I am?" A hint of fury flashed on Fang Wangshu's face. He was just about to take action when he saw the surrounding space tremble fiercely. It was as if there was an invisible power descending from the sky. He then raised his head abruptly and saw a huge golden palm descending from the sky, slapping out toward his 30,000-man army as if it was swatting flies. A loud sound rang out as if the world was collapsing. The 30,000-man army he led was instantly slapped into meat paste. It was as if it was swatting mosquitoes, and countless splatters of blood exploded on the ground. The area within a range of 10 lis was instantly filled with the stench of blood. Looking at the bloody mess that covered the entire place, Fang Wangshu's countenance turned pale, and the long sword in his hand dropped to the ground with a clang. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.